Story 1. Family kicked me out on my birthday. Now they're trying to claim my new home as a family asset. Hey, I'm Robin. And man, do I have a story for you? I'm 27, and life's been a bit of a mess lately. I work as a marketing assistant, which is not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Well, some of them. I live with my parents and my younger brother Tom in a not-so-great house. The place is cramped, falling apart, and always smells weird. But it's home, or at least it was. Let me start by saying I've been contributing a lot around here. I've been paying a big chunk of the bills, buying groceries, and even handling house repairs when something breaks down. You'd think I'd get a little appreciation for that, right? But nah. Every time I walk into the room, I hear my mom, Susan, talking down to me like I'm some failure. Robin, when are you going to get a real job? She'd say. It's like her favorite line. I mean, what does she even mean by real job? I bust my butt at work. Marketing isn't easy, but in her eyes, because I'm not a doctor or a lawyer, it doesn't count. Every time I try to defend myself, it's the same response. If it was a real job, you'd have your own place by now. Yeah, okay, Mom. And then there's Tom, my 26-year-old brother. We've never really gotten along. He's got this smug attitude, always looking down on me like he's better than I am because he has more followers on social media or whatever. He barely lifts a finger around the house. Guess who picks up the slack? Yep, me. But does anyone care? Nope. Anyway, my 28th birthday was coming up, and I was kind of excited for it despite everything. I know, dumb, right? But I really thought maybe this year would be different. I even saved up and got myself a nice cake from this fancy bakery downtown. I was imagining how we'd have a little celebration. Just the four of us. It wasn't going to be anything big, but I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd actually care. So a few days before, I sat down with my mom and dad, Mark, to talk about it. Hey, I was thinking we could do something for my birthday this weekend. Just, hang out, maybe have some cake, I said, trying to keep my hopes in check. Mom didn't even look up from her magazine. We'll see, Robin. We might have plans. Plans? On my birthday? I should have known something was up, but I didn't want to believe it. I mean, I've been living here my whole life, helping out, working hard. Why would they have plans that didn't include me? Fast forward to my birthday, and I was feeling good. I went to work, got a bunch of happy birthday messages from coworkers, and even treated myself to a new outfit. Things were looking up, right? I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd get home and they'd have a little surprise waiting for me. I don't know, a card, a cake, something, anything. But the second I pulled into the driveway, my stomach dropped. My stuff was out on the front lawn. Boxes, bags, my clothes, my books, everything, just thrown out there like trash. I jumped out of the car, my heart pounding, and rushed over to the porch. And there they were, my mom, dad, and Tom, just standing there staring at me. It was like some twisted family meeting or something. My heart was racing, and I couldn't even think straight. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Mom stepped forward, her face cold like she didn't care at all. Robin, it's time for you to move out. You're not welcome here anymore. I stood there, frozen, like I couldn't process what she was saying. Move out? On my birthday? What kind of sick joke was this? I looked at Dad, hoping he'd step in, say something, tell me this was all a misunderstanding. But no. He just stared at the ground, his hands stuffed in his pockets like he couldn't even look at me. I felt this rush of anger and confusion. But it's my birthday! Where am I supposed to go? My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded. That's when Tom chimed in, his smirk making me want to scream. Maybe you should have thought about that before being such a burden all these years. A burden? I was the one paying the bills, buying food, keeping this crappy house from falling apart. How was I the burden? I looked at my mom, hoping, begging for some kind of explanation, something that made sense. It wasn't enough, she said, her voice sharp like a slap. We need the space, and frankly, you need to grow up. That was it. No empathy, no second chances, just cold indifference. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them see me break down. Can I at least get my things? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. They're all packed, my mom replied, gesturing to the boxes on the lawn like it was no big deal. You should go now. That was it. Happy birthday to me, right? I started loading the boxes into my car, my hands shaking. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's nightmare. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask them how they could be so heartless. But I didn't. I just kept moving one box after another, trying to hold myself together. As I finished packing up the last of my things, I turned to look at them one last time, hoping, no, praying that they'd change their minds, that they'd realize how messed up this was. Why today? Why on my birthday? I asked, barely able to get the words out. Mom didn't even blink. Consider it our gift to you. Independence. And just like that, I was gone. On what should have been a day of celebration, I found myself driving away from the only home I'd ever known, with no idea where I was headed. I ended up at some cheap motel, the kind with a flickering neon sign out front, spending my birthday alone, surrounded by my hastily packed belongings. I sat there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the people who were supposed to love me could be so cruel. How could they do this to me, their own daughter, on my birthday? That night, I made a promise to myself. I would never rely on them again. I would pick myself up, no matter how hard it got, because clearly I was on my own now. After that whole birthday fiasco, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. It wasn't just about getting kicked out, though, yeah, that sucked. It was realizing that the people I thought were supposed to have my back just didn't care. I spent that night in a dingy motel, trying to wrap my head around it all, but there was no making sense of it. So the next day, I did the only thing I could think of. I threw myself into work. I mean, what else was I going to do? I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had bills to pay, and now I needed to find a place to live. My boss, Hannah, noticed pretty quickly that something was off. I was at the office at all hours, hunched over my laptop, answering emails like a robot. She's sharp, and it didn't take long for her to pull me aside. It was late, and the office was practically empty when she found me at my desk. "Robin, can we talk?" she asked, leaning on the edge of my cubicle. I looked up, and I must have looked like a mess because she gave me this concerned look. "You're going to work yourself into the ground at this rate. What's going on?" I didn't want to get into it, but the second she asked, it all just came out. I told her everything, how my family kicked me out, how I was staying in this horrible motel with my stuff still in boxes. As I talked, Hannah's expression softened. She didn't say anything at first, just listened, which was more than my family ever did. When I finished, she let out a sigh and said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I shrugged, feeling embarrassed. I mean, she's my boss, not my therapist, but she didn't seem to mind. "Look, Robin, I have a spare room in my place. It's not much, but you're welcome to stay there until you figure things out." I couldn't believe it. I didn't even know how to respond at first. "Are you serious?" I asked, half expecting her to change her mind or something, but she smiled and nodded. "Of course, I know what it's like to be in a tough spot. Don't worry about it." I was so relieved I almost started crying again, but I managed to hold it together. "Thank you," I whispered. "I don't know how to repay you." She waved me off. "Don't even mention it. You've been killing it at work, and I'd hate to see you burn out. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself." And just like that, I had a place to stay. It wasn't home, but it was something. I packed up my stuff from the motel and moved into Hannah's guest room the next day. It was a little small, but it was clean, warm, and quiet, which was all I needed at that point. The first night there, I sat on the bed just trying to process everything. I felt a little better, but there was still this hole in my chest, like everything I thought I knew had been ripped away. But I didn't let myself wallow for too long. I threw myself into work even harder, if that's possible. Hannah wasn't kidding when she said she'd push me harder, but honestly, I appreciated it. It kept me distracted. I took on more freelance gigs, too. I figured the more money I could save, the faster I could get out on my own. It wasn't easy, though. There were nights where I stayed up until 3 a.m., just staring at my computer, trying to crank out designs while my mind kept drifting back to my family. I kept thinking, maybe they'd call, maybe they'd apologize, maybe they'd realize they messed up. But no, nothing. Radio silence. During all this, my best friend Mike was a godsend. We'd been friends since college, and even though we weren't living in the same city anymore, we'd always stayed close. I told him what happened, and he was furious. "I can't believe they do that to you," he said during one of our calls. "You deserve better." He wasn't wrong, but it still stung. "Yeah, well, it is what it is," I muttered. "I just got to keep moving forward." Mike, being the joker he is, tried to lighten the mood. "You know what would really piss them off?" he said with a laugh. "You becoming wildly successful and rubbing it in their faces." I laughed, but the idea stuck with me. Not that I wanted revenge or anything. Okay, maybe a little, but mostly I just wanted to prove to myself that I didn't need them. I could make it on my own. So that became my mission. Work harder, save more, and eventually get out of Hannah's guest room and into a place of my own. Over the next few months, things started looking up. My designs were getting noticed by bigger clients, and I was bringing in more money than I ever had. I kept telling myself that every late night, every all-nighter was worth it. And honestly, it was. Slowly but surely, I was rebuilding my life, one project at a time. I started to feel like maybe I didn't need my family after all. Sure, it hurt, and it probably always would, but I was proving to myself that I could survive without them. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And that felt good. One day, Hannah pulled me into her office with this huge grin on her face. Robin, I've got some good news, she said. How does a lead designer sound to you? With a raise, of course. I was speechless. Are you serious? I blurted out, feeling like I might pass out from excitement. Dead serious, she said, still grinning. You've earned it. You've been doing incredible work, and it's time to recognize that. I couldn't believe it. Lead designer? Me? I felt like all the hard work, all the sleepless nights, all the stress, it was finally paying off. Thank you, I managed to say, still in shock. Don't thank me yet, she said, winking. You're going to have a lot more responsibility now. I didn't care. I was ready for it. This was what I'd been working for. With the raise and all the freelance gigs I'd been stacking up, I was finally in a place where I could start thinking about my next move. Literally. I wasn't going to stay in Hannah's guest room forever, and now I could actually start looking for a place of my own. But the thing was, it wasn't just about the money or the job. It was about finally feeling like I was in control of my life again. For so long, I'd felt stuck. Stuck in that house with my family, stuck in their expectations of me, stuck in their judgment. But now, I was free. I was making my own decisions, building my own life, and no one could take that away from me. I was finally moving forward, and it felt damn good. A few weeks after I got promoted to lead designer, I was finally starting to feel like I had my life together. I'd been working nonstop, saving money, and I was even thinking about getting my own place soon. Things were really looking up for me. But of course, right when you think everything is going smoothly, life decides to throw a wrench in the gears. It started one random Wednesday afternoon. I was in the middle of working on this big project when my phone buzzed. I didn't think much of it, just figured it was an email or something. But when I glanced at the screen, I saw the name I least expected. Tom. My brother. The last person I wanted to hear from. For a second, I just stared at the phone. Part of me didn't want to answer it. I hadn't heard from Tom or my parents since they kicked me out on my birthday, and honestly, I didn't miss them. But curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. Robin, it's me, Tom replied, his voice quieter than usual. It wasn't his usual cocky tone, which threw me off. I know it's you, I said, a little annoyed. What do you want? There was this long pause on the other end, and for a moment I thought he'd hung up. But then he spoke again, and I could hear the hesitation in his voice. I need help. I raised an eyebrow, not believing what I was hearing. Tom? Needing help from me? The same brother who stood there and watched while my stuff was thrown out onto the front lawn? Yeah, right. I don't know what to tell you, I replied, already feeling the anger bubbling up inside me. You made it pretty clear I'm not part of the family anymore. He let out a sigh. Look, I know things have been rough, but this isn't about that. It's about Dad. He lost his job, and Mom's spending is out of control. I can't afford school anymore. There it was, the real reason for the call. It wasn't about me or making amends or even caring about what happened. It was about money. It was always about money. I bit my lip, fighting back the wave of emotions that hit me. Part of me wanted to tell him off, to remind him how they treated me, to hang up and never look back. But another part of me, a small stupid part, still felt that pull of obligation. They were my family after all. Or at least, they used to be. So let me get this straight, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You're calling me now, after months of silence, because you need money? It's not just about the money, Tom said quickly. We're in a bad spot, Robin. You know how Mom is? She's been spending like crazy, and Dad? Well, he's not exactly doing great without a job. I don't know what to do. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. That sounds like a you problem, Tom, not mine. Come on, Robin. We're family, he said, and I could practically hear the desperation in his voice. It was the first time in years he'd sounded vulnerable, but I wasn't falling for it. Family? I scoffed, unable to stop the bitterness from seeping into my tone. You guys threw me out on my birthday. Family doesn't do that. He didn't have an answer for that, just a long pause. And honestly, that silence told me everything I needed to know. I'm done being your backup plan, I said, my voice firm. You and Mom and Dad made it pretty clear where I stand with you all. Don't call me again. Before he could respond, I hung up. My hand was shaking slightly as I set the phone down on my desk. I felt this strange mix of anger, sadness, and relief. It felt good to stand up for myself, to finally put my foot down and say no. But at the same time, it sucked that it had come to this. I sat there for a few minutes, just staring at the wall, trying to process everything. I kept thinking about all the times I'd bent over backward for my family, all the times I'd sacrificed my own happiness for theirs. And where had it gotten me? Homeless on my birthday. It was time to stop feeling guilty for walking away. They made their choice, and I had made mine. After that call, I threw myself back into work. I didn't want to dwell on it too long because I knew it would just drag me down. So I focused on the project I was working on, trying to push the thoughts of Tom and my parents to the back of my mind. But the thing is, once those thoughts creep in, they're hard to get rid of. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head. I kept thinking about what I could have said, what I should have said. I wanted to believe that maybe, deep down, they were sorry. But I knew better. They weren't calling because they missed me or because they regretted what they did. They were calling because they needed something from me, and I wasn't about to let them use me again. The next morning, I woke up feeling more determined than ever. It was time to focus on me, on building my life, my career, and my future. I couldn't keep looking back. Couldn't keep wondering if things could have been different. They weren't. And that was just the reality of it. From that day forward, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let my family drag me down anymore. I'd been through enough, and I was finally in a place where I was starting to build something good for myself. I wasn't about to let them ruin that. Sure, part of me still felt guilty for cutting them off, for not helping when they were clearly in a tough spot. But then I reminded myself, where were they when I was struggling? Where were they when I needed help? Yeah, I didn't owe them anything. So I kept going. I worked hard, saved my money, and kept my focus on the future. And every time I started to feel that old guilt creeping in, I reminded myself of that phone call. They made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. I wasn't going to be their safety net anymore. And honestly, it felt good to finally be free. I finally saved up enough to buy a really nice apartment, and it's honestly the best thing that's happened to me. I was in the middle of a project, knee-deep in designs and completely focused, when the doorbell rang. At first, I thought it might be a package or something. I'd been ordering a bunch of stuff for work, so I didn't think twice about it. But when I checked the security camera, I froze. There, standing on my porch, were my parents. And Tom. My stomach did this weird flip, and I felt like someone had punched me. They hadn't reached out since that call from Tom weeks ago. I thought we were done. So why the hell were they here? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down before opening the door. My mind was racing with all the possible reasons they could be standing there. Maybe they were here to apologize, or maybe they just needed something else. Honestly, I didn't know which would be worse. When I opened the door, my mom, Susan, didn't even wait for me to say anything. She pushed past me like she owned the place, her eyes scanning my living room like she was appraising it. "Wow, Robin, you've really done well for yourself," she said, this weird smile on her face, the kind that wasn't really a smile at all. I just stood there, stunned. Tom followed her in, looking uncomfortable, while my dad, Mark, shuffled in last, his hands stuffed in his pockets like he had no idea what to do with himself. "What are you guys doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart was pounding and I could feel this tension building up inside me. I knew this wasn't going to be a good conversation, but I was hoping, maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. Mom turned around, that fake smile still plastered on her face. "We're here to talk about living arrangements." I blinked, confused. "What?" Dad cleared his throat, and for the first time since they'd arrived, he spoke. "We think it's time for the family to be back together." I almost laughed. It was so absurd, so ridiculous that for a second I thought they were joking. "You're joking, right?" I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. Mom's smile faded, and she crossed her arms, looking at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "No, Robin, we've talked it over, and we think it's time we all live together again, as a family." I stared at her, speechless. This had to be some kind of prank. "After everything that's happened? After you kicked me out on my birthday and now you want to move in with me?" Tom, who had been silent until now, chimed in with his usual smug tone. "Come on, Robin, don't be so dramatic. That's all in the past." I felt my blood boil. "All in the past? You guys threw me out on my birthday? You left me with nowhere to go, no support, nothing, and now you want to just waltz back into my life like nothing happened?" Mom's expression hardened. "We gave you the push you needed," she said, her voice cold. "And look how well you've done because of it. You should be thanking us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were trying to take credit for my success? For everything I'd worked my ass off for? So what? You think you can just show up, claim credit for my hard work, and what? Move in here? This is my home, not yours. Dad, trying to play the peacemaker, stepped forward. Robin, be reasonable. We're struggling right now. You have all this space, and we thought it'd be nice to be together again. I shook my head, my frustration building with every word they said. You're only here because you need something. You didn't care about me when I was struggling, and now you expect me to help you? That's not how this works. Mom's face twisted with anger. We're your family, Robin. We sacrificed for you. Everything you have is because of us. I couldn't hold back anymore. Sacrificed? What exactly did you sacrifice, Mom? You kicked me out. You didn't help me when I needed it most. You threw me away like I was nothing. And now you think you're entitled to my success? To my home? She opened her mouth to argue, but I wasn't done. I've worked hard for this. I've built this life for myself with no help from you. You don't get to walk in here and claim anything. Tom rolled his eyes. God, Robin, stop being so selfish. We're just asking for a little help. That word, selfish, set me off. Selfish? I snapped. You want to talk about selfish? How about you all throwing me out of the house, leaving me with nothing? How about showing up here now, demanding that I give you a place to stay because you've screwed up your own lives? That's selfish, Tom, not me. Dad stepped forward again, his voice softer, almost pleading. Robin, please. We're just asking for a chance. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm raging inside me. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to use me anymore. Mom's eyes narrowed. Fine. If you want to be difficult, we'll take legal action. We have rights, you know. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Legal action? On what grounds? We'll find something, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Don't push me, Robin. I let out a bitter laugh. Go ahead, try. But let me tell you something. This is my house, and you have no right to it. You're not moving in. Not now, not ever. They didn't say anything for a moment. I could see the anger and frustration building in their faces, but I didn't care. I wasn't backing down. Finally, I walked over to the front door and opened it wide. Get out, I said, my voice steady. Now. They hesitated for a moment, but I stood firm, waiting for them to leave. Mom huffed, shooting me a look full of hatred before marching out. Dad followed her, looking like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. And then Tom, who just shook his head in disbelief, walked out without another word. As soon as they were gone, I closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. My heart was still racing, and my hands were shaking, but I felt this weird sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me anymore. Not now. Not ever. After I kicked my family out of my house, things got quiet again. I'm not going to lie, it was a relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control over my own life, like I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the end of it. My mom had thrown out that threat about legal action, and even though I didn't think she had anything to stand on, I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't done trying to weasel their way back into my life. A few days later, I got a call from Mike. He's one of my closest friends, and lucky for me, he's also a lawyer. I had mentioned the whole situation to him in passing, but I hadn't gone into all the details. Now that my family had crossed the line, I figured it was time to get some real advice. Hey, Robin, Mike said when I answered. You free to talk? I've been thinking about your situation. Yeah, sure, I replied, suddenly feeling a bit anxious. What's up? I've been looking into your parents' situation a bit more, he said, his tone getting more serious. I know you mentioned that they've been struggling financially and you're worried they might try something shady. Well, I did some digging and it turns out they're in deeper trouble than you thought. My heart sank. I didn't want to hear this, but I knew I needed to. What do you mean? I asked. There's a history of financial issues, Robin. Tax problems, debt. It's not just that your dad lost his job and your mom's been overspending. They've been digging themselves into a hole for years. And now that you've made it clear they can't rely on you, they're getting desperate. I sat there, processing what Mike was saying. My mind flashed back to my mom's smug threats, her talking about legal action, her entitlement to what I'd worked for. It made sense now. This wasn't just about needing help. They were trying to find a way out of their own mess, and they saw me as their way out. So, what do? I asked, feeling the familiar weight of stress settling on my shoulders. Mike was quiet for a second before answering. Well, first off, you need to protect yourself. They might not have much of a case to try and take anything from you. But people do stupid things when they're desperate. We should file for a restraining order to make sure they can't harass you anymore. You've got enough evidence of their behavior, those threats, them showing up at your house. It's time to take some legal steps. A restraining order. That sounded extreme, but at the same time, I knew it was the right move. My family had already shown they didn't respect my boundaries, and if they were desperate enough to keep pushing, I needed to protect myself. I'll do it, I said, feeling a sense of resolve. Let's file the restraining order. Mike talked me through the process, and within a few days we had everything in motion. It wasn't just about stopping them from coming to my house. It was about finally drawing the line. I wasn't going to let them drag me into their mess. I had worked too hard to get to where I was, and I wasn't about to let their issues derail my progress. As all of this was happening, I noticed something strange. I started getting weird messages from mutual acquaintances, people who knew my family but hadn't been in touch for a while. They were vague at first, but then it became clear. My parents were spreading lies about me. Apparently, I had abandoned them when they needed me most. I was selfish and ungrateful for not helping out after everything they'd done for me. It was laughable, really. The same people who kicked me out on my birthday were now trying to play the victim card. I couldn't believe it. But at the same time, it pissed me off. I had worked so hard to rebuild my life, and now they were trying to tear it down by turning people against me. I called Mike again, letting him know about the rumors. What should I do? I asked, frustration clear in my voice. Honestly, don't engage with it, he said. These people don't know the full story, and your parents are banking on the fact that you'll get defensive and try to explain yourself. Don't give them that satisfaction. We'll handle this in court if it gets that far, and trust me, you've got nothing to worry about. It wasn't easy taking Mike's advice. My first instinct was to blast the truth to anyone who would listen, to tell them how my family had treated me and why I had every right to cut them off. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Mike was right. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I knew the truth, and that was enough. Weeks passed, and the legal proceedings moved forward. Mike was a beast in the courtroom, and when the restraining order was finalized, I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. My family couldn't come near me, and if they tried to pull any more stunts, they'd be in serious legal trouble. But that wasn't the end of their problems. Remember those financial issues Mike had mentioned? Well, it turns out they were worse than we thought. After some more digging, Mike found out that my parents had been dodging taxes for years. They'd been hiding money, falsifying documents, and now the IRS was on their tail. It was almost poetic, watching the mess they had made for themselves unravel right in front of them. As much as I wanted to feel bad for them, I couldn't. They had brought this on themselves. They had made their choices, and now they had to deal with the consequences. I wasn't going to be their savior anymore. One day after everything had settled down, I sat in my living room, staring out the window and thinking about everything that had happened. It was strange feeling this sense of closure. I had spent so long feeling trapped by my family's expectations, by their manipulation and guilt trips, and now, for the first time, I felt free. Mike called later that night to check in. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I'm good," I said, and for the first time I actually meant it. "It's been a crazy ride, but I'm good." "You did the right thing, Robin," Mike said. "They made their choices, and you made yours. Don't let them make you feel guilty for protecting yourself." I smiled to myself. He was right. I had stood up for myself, and I wasn't going to feel guilty for it. For too long, I had let my family control how I felt, how I acted, and now I was finally in control of my own life. And that felt damn good. Story 2. Fiancé took a break to tour Europe with her college friends, so I canceled the wedding. All right, here goes nothing. So me and Sarah had been together for about 5 years, engaged for almost 3. Things were going all right, or at least I thought they were. We had a wedding date set, everything was booked, and I was under the impression we were on the same page. Guess I was wrong about that. See, about 6 weeks ago, she tells me she's going on this trip to Europe with her old college friends. It was like a trip of a lifetime kind of deal, or whatever she called it. I was fine with it. I mean, it wasn't like I was going to stop her from going on a trip with her friends, right? In fact, I even drove her to the airport, helped her with her bags, gave her a kiss goodbye, and wished her a fun time. That's when she hit me with it, the whole, "we need to take a break" thing. Now, it wasn't like she said, "let's sit down and talk about things." Nope. She just drops it on me as we're walking to the security line like it's no big deal. I remember thinking, what the hell do you mean, a break? But before I could even respond or ask questions, she's off in the line, waving goodbye, and that was it. I didn't even process it fully at first. I got back in the car and drove home, thinking it was maybe some weird comment she made because she was nervous about the trip. But then I started calling her, just to check in. And guess what? Blocked. Like, straight up blocked on everything. I couldn't call her, text her, nothing. I checked social media to see if maybe she posted something or gave an update on her trip. Blocked there too. That's when it started to sink in that this whole break thing wasn't some casual comment. She meant it. She really just left for Europe and decided to cut me off without even talking about it. I tried to give it a few days. Maybe she'd calm down. Maybe she'd realize she was being ridiculous. But after 5 days of complete silence, I was done. I made up my mind right then and there. The wedding was off. And you know what? I felt good about that decision. Why should I be with someone who thinks they can just walk away whenever they feel like it? I wasn't going to sit around and wait for her to decide when she was ready to be in a relationship again. Hell no. She made her choice, so I made mine. I canceled everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, whatever we had planned for the wedding, I pulled the plug. And then, I took it one step further and decided she wasn't moving in with me either, which was supposed to happen in March. Nope, she could figure out her living situation when she got back from her little vacation because it wasn't going to be with me. Weeks went by, and I didn't hear a word from her. Not a single message, not a call, nothing. Then, one day out of nowhere, she calls me. I didn't even know it was her at first because she must have used a different number or something. She says she's getting back on Thursday morning, gives me her flight details like I'm supposed to care, and acts like everything is just fine, like she didn't ghost me for 6 weeks. I paused for a second and then said, "What's that got to do with me?" And man, the silence on the other end of the phone was golden. She didn't know how to respond. I didn't give her a chance to explain either. I blocked her, just like she did to me, and that was the end of it. Or at least I thought it was. Later that day, I figured it was time to let people know what was up, especially since the wedding was off and all. We had a group chat with some of our friends and family, so I just posted a quick message saying, "Hey, just letting everyone know the wedding is canceled, and so is our relationship." I didn't think it would blow up like it did, but man, people had questions. Everyone started asking what happened, so I laid it out for them. I told them how Sarah went off to Europe, decided we needed a break without even asking me, and then blocked me for 6 weeks. They were all pretty shocked. Some people were even mad on my behalf, which honestly felt kind of nice. You never really know how people will react when you drop news like that, but it was good to have some support. Around 2 p.m., Sarah finally decided to chime in. She didn't say much at first. Just asked me to call her so we could talk about everything. I wasn't having it. I told her we could talk right there in the group chat if she wanted to explain herself. She didn't like that, though. Said something like, "This is between us, not for everyone else." Yeah, no. She made this public the second she walked out of my life without a word. She tried messaging me a few more times, but I just kept it short. I wasn't in the mood to listen to her excuses. By 6 p.m., she was begging me to pick her up from the airport so we could talk this out. Like, seriously? As if nothing had happened? I told her straight up, that was your plan, not mine. None of this was my plan. And I meant it. I wasn't going to go running to the airport like some fool after everything she pulled. To be honest, part of me was still waiting for her to drop some kind of explanation that would make it all make sense. I guess I wanted to believe there was a reason, something that would justify why she treated me like this. But as the hours went by, I realized there wasn't going to be a reason. She wasn't going to come back with some grand apology or tell me there was some misunderstanding. She made her choice, and I had to live with that. So the next few days, I focused on getting my life back on track. I wasn't about to let this ruin me. I started going through our shared accounts, making sure everything was split up, and yeah, I changed the locks on my apartment. Last thing I needed was her showing up unannounced, thinking she could just waltz back into my life. I was done with that. I even started looking at some trips of my own. I figured if she could run off to Europe for 6 weeks, maybe I should take some time for myself too. I deserved it after all the crap she put me through. Anyway, that's where things stand right now. She'll be back in a couple of days, but I'm not going to be there waiting. She can figure out her own way home. As far as I'm concerned, this chapter of my life is over, and I'm moving on to better things. All right, so let me tell you what happened next, because things got wild pretty quick. After I made my peace with the fact that the wedding was off, I figured it was just a matter of time before Sarah tried to reach out again. I was ready for it, but what I didn't expect was how fast she'd try to play the victim card. It all started when I got this message from one of our mutual friends, Emily. Now, Emily's cool. She's always been straight with me. But this time she was a bit hesitant, like she didn't really want to get involved. But she sends me a screenshot from another group chat, One that I wasn't in, obviously. It was Sarah talking to some of her friends, trying to paint this whole thing like I was the one who overreacted. Can you believe that? In the chat, she's telling them how stressed she was about the wedding and how she needed space to clear her head. She even said something like, I didn't mean for the break to last that long, but I thought he would understand. And then there was this gem. I just needed to figure out if I was ready for marriage, but he canceled everything before I could talk to him. I almost laughed when I read that. Like she blocked me on everything for 6 weeks, then acts like I'm the one who didn't give her a chance to talk? Nah, that's not how this works. I felt my blood boiling just reading the messages. She was playing the whole poor me card, telling everyone that I was being irrational and rushed into canceling the wedding. At this point, I knew I couldn't just let her keep running her mouth, making me look like the bad guy. So I decided to address it head on. I wasn't going to let her rewrite history. I jumped into the main group chat where all our close friends and family were still buzzing from the wedding cancellation news. Everyone was trying to figure out what the hell was going on, and I figured it was time to clear the air. I posted a message that said, Look, I just want everyone to know the truth here. Sarah decided we were taking a break without talking to me, blocked me for 6 weeks, and now she's acting like this is some kind of miscommunication. I canceled the wedding because I wasn't going to sit around waiting for someone who didn't respect me enough to even have a conversation. Immediately, people started replying, offering their support and saying how messed up the whole situation was. Sarah was silent in the chat for a good hour or so after that, but then she finally came in with some weak excuse about how she didn't think it would go this far and how she never meant to hurt anyone. Again, no accountability, no real apology, just trying to save face. One of my buddies, Jake, jumped in and called her out right there in front of everyone. He was like, Sarah, you can't just drop a break on someone and disappear for weeks and expect everything to be fine when you come back. That's not how relationships work. Honestly, I was relieved someone else said it because I was getting tired of defending myself at this point. Now here's where things got interesting. Sarah's friend Megan, who I always suspected was kind of shady, decided to back Sarah up. Megan starts saying how Sarah's been through a lot and how wedding pressure can really mess with your head. She was trying to make it sound like Sarah was the victim of stress and anxiety, which, okay, I get that planning a wedding is stressful, but come on. That's not an excuse to block your fiancé and go radio silent for 6 weeks while you're partying in Europe. Megan goes on, saying stuff like, You should have given Sarah more time to process everything, and maybe you acted too quickly by canceling the wedding. That's when I lost it. I wasn't about to sit there and listen to some third-party person who wasn't even in the relationship try to tell me how to handle it. So I replied, Megan, with all due respect, you don't know the half of it. This isn't about wedding stress. It's about the fact that Sarah blocked me, cut me off completely, and didn't bother to talk to me once during the whole trip. I tried. I called, texted, and got nothing. How much more time was I supposed to give her? Another 6 weeks? A year? If Sarah didn't want to be with me, she could have said that. But instead, she disappeared and expected me to just sit around waiting. That's not how it works. The chat went quiet after that. I think everyone was starting to realize just how messed up the whole situation was. Even Megan didn't have much to say after that. A couple of days passed, and I thought maybe things would calm down. But nope. I get another call from Sarah's sister, Rachel. Now, Rachel and I had always gotten along pretty well, so I figured maybe she was calling to check in or something. But as soon as I answered, she went straight into, Why did you cancel the wedding without talking to Sarah first? I was stunned. I didn't expect Rachel to take Sarah's side, especially after everything. I told her, Rachel, your sister blocked me. How was I supposed to talk to her when she literally cut me off? Rachel didn't really have an answer to that, but she kept pushing, saying Sarah was heartbroken and that I should have waited for her to come back and talk things through. At that point, I had enough. I told Rachel straight up, Look, I get that you want to defend your sister, but what she did was wrong. She didn't give me any say in the whole break thing, and I'm not going to wait around for someone who doesn't respect me. If Sarah wants to explain herself, she knows how to reach me, but I'm not going to be the one to fix this. Rachel tried to say more, but I just told her I had to go and hung up. I wasn't about to keep having the same conversation with every single person Sarah sent my way. That night, I got another message from Sarah. This time, she was apologizing. Well, sort of. She said she was sorry for how things went down, but didn't take any responsibility for the choices she made. It was one of those half apologies where she tried to make it sound like we were both at fault. I didn't reply. There was no point. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I wasn't going to go back and forth with her anymore. After that, I made sure to block her everywhere again, just to make sure there wouldn't be any more drama. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses or letting her drag this out any longer. At the end of the day, I realized something. I dodged a bullet. If this is how Sarah acted when things got tough, I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be married to her. I felt bad for the time we wasted, but I was glad it ended before it got any worse. Now I could move on, and that's exactly what I plan to do. Update 1. All right. So after all the drama with Sarah and her trying to guilt trip me into reconsidering the wedding, which by the way didn't work, I thought things would quiet down for a bit. But nope, not in my life. Turns out, I had way more coming my way than I could have expected. About a week after I blocked Sarah for the last time, I get this random call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer it because at this point, I wasn't in the mood for more drama. But for some reason, I picked up. And guess who it was? Sarah's mom. Yeah, her mom. Like, what the hell? Now, Sarah's mom, Lisa, had always been one of those people who was super sweet to your face, but you could tell she had this whole passive-aggressive vibe just under the surface. She was the type of person who would give you a compliment, but somehow, it felt like an insult. You know what I mean? Anyway, Lisa starts off the conversation all friendly, like nothing had happened. Hi, sweetheart. How are you doing? She says, like we hadn't just canceled a wedding and blocked her daughter from my life. I wasn't about to play games, so I kept it short. I'm fine, Lisa. What's going on? That's when she starts with the whole guilt trip. She says, oh, we were so looking forward to the wedding, and this whole thing has really devastated Sarah. You know she's been crying every day since she got back, right? She's just been a mess. Now, I wasn't about to let her make me feel bad for Sarah, not after everything she pulled, so I told her straight up, Lisa, I'm sorry Sarah's upset, but she made her choices. I didn't call off the wedding for no reason. And then, Lisa hits me with this. Well, maybe you overreacted a bit. You know, Sarah was just nervous about the whole thing, and sometimes people make mistakes when they're stressed. Don't you think you should give her a second chance? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, she was acting like Sarah blocking me for 6 weeks and disappearing was just a minor mistake. I wasn't having it. Lisa, I said, this wasn't just nerves. She literally blocked me on everything and went off to Europe without saying a word. That's not something you just brush off. If Sarah was having doubts, she should have talked to me, not shut me out. But Lisa wasn't done yet. Oh no. She kept pushing. I know it seems bad, but think about all the years you've been together. You've had such a good relationship. Don't you want to try and save it? I'm sure once Sarah explains everything, you'll understand. At this point, I was getting pretty annoyed. It was like Lisa wasn't even listening to what I was saying. She was so focused on getting me to take Sarah back that she wasn't considering how I felt. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and said, Lisa, with all due respect, Sarah had 6 weeks to reach out to me, and she didn't. I've already made up my mind. The wedding is off, and that's final. I thought that would be the end of it, but Lisa wasn't done yet. She goes, well, if you won't talk to Sarah, at least come over for dinner so we can talk as a family. Maybe we can work through this together. I was speechless. She was inviting me to their family dinner, like this was some kind of minor argument that could be solved over a plate of spaghetti. I knew this wasn't going anywhere, so I told her, thanks for the offer, but I think it's best if we all just move on. And with that, I hung up. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Wrong. The next day, I get a message from Sarah's dad. Now let me tell you, her dad, Tom, is one of those old school guys who thinks he's always right. He's never really liked me, but he tolerated me because Sarah and I were together. So when I saw the message from him, I knew it wasn't going to be a friendly chat. He basically laid into me, saying how I was throwing away a good thing, and that I was ruining Sarah's life by not giving her a chance to explain. He even said something like, men don't act like this. You should be standing by your fiancé, not running at the first sign of trouble. That really pissed me off. I mean, I was standing by Sarah for years, and this is how I get treated? I didn't reply to Tom's message because I knew it would just turn into a pointless argument, and honestly, I was over it. But that wasn't the worst part. A couple of days later, I get a message from Sarah. She used some other number to reach out, and it was a long message, like multiple paragraphs long. She went on about how she was sorry for everything, how she didn't mean to hurt me, and how she realized she made a mistake. She said she was confused about the wedding and needed time to think but didn't know how to tell me, so she panicked and blocked me. Then she dropped the big one. She said she still wanted to get married. Yeah, you read that right. After all of this, after blocking me, ghosting me for 6 weeks, and trying to blame it all on wedding nerves, she still wanted to marry me. It was like she was living in some fantasy where everything could just go back to normal with a simple apology. I sat there staring at the message for a while, not really knowing what to say. Part of me was still angry. No, actually, most of me was still angry. But there was a small part of me that felt, I don't know, sad, I guess. Like, we'd spent years together and this is how it all ended. It wasn't how I pictured things going, that's for sure. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't something I could forgive. It wasn't just about the wedding or the trip to Europe. It was about trust. Sarah had broken that trust, and no amount of apologies or explanations was going to fix it. I couldn't marry someone who thought it was okay to just disappear when things got tough, so I did what I should have done from the start. I blocked the number she used to text me, deleted the message, and moved on. For real this time. After all of that, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't tied down by Sarah's guilt trips or her family's pressure anymore. I could finally focus on myself and what I wanted for the future. And honestly, it felt pretty damn good. Update 2. Alright, so you'd think after I blocked Sarah and her family again, things would finally settle down, right? Wrong. Of course not. Because that would be too easy. I swear, it's like they just couldn't let go of the fact that the wedding was off, and they kept coming at me from every angle, like they were trying to wear me down or something. Spoiler, it didn't work. A couple of days after Sarah's last attempt to reach out, I get a text from someone else. This time, it's from one of Sarah's bridesmaids, Katie. Now, Katie and I weren't exactly close. I mean, she was always nice enough when we hung out as a group, but she was more Sarah's friend than mine. So when I saw her name pop up, I was immediately suspicious. The text started off innocent enough. She was asking how I was doing, saying she'd heard about the breakup, blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't stupid. I knew she wasn't just checking in for no reason. So I kept my response short, something like, "Yeah, I'm fine, just dealing with everything one day at a time." And then she hits me with it. "I think you should hear Sarah out." Here we go again. I stared at my phone for a minute, trying to figure out if I should even respond. Part of me wanted to just block Katie too and move on, but I was curious. I wanted to see where this was going. So I asked her why she thought that. Katie goes on this long rant about how Sarah's been really struggling and how she's been crying every day since she got back from Europe. She said Sarah was too scared to reach out to me directly because she thought I wouldn't listen. Apparently, Sarah had been telling her friends that she messed up big time, but didn't know how to fix it. I sighed, feeling that frustration bubble up again. "Katie, I've heard all of this already. I gave Sarah chances to explain herself, and she didn't. She blocked me for 6 weeks and then expected everything to be fine when she got back. That's not something I can just forget." Katie tried again, saying how Sarah just needed space and didn't mean to hurt me. But the more she talked, the more I realized what was really happening. Sarah had sent Katie to do her dirty work, thinking maybe I'd listen to someone else. It was like she didn't even have the guts to face me herself anymore. I was done. I told Katie, "Look, I appreciate you trying to help, but this isn't something that can be fixed with a few apologies. It's over, and that's it." I could tell she wanted to keep pushing, but I didn't give her the chance. I blocked her right after that, and then, just when I thought I was finally in the clear, I get another message. This time, it's from one of Sarah's cousins, Mark. Now, I hadn't heard from Mark in months, and out of nowhere, he's texting me, asking if we can meet up to talk about everything. At this point, I was so fed up with everyone trying to drag me back into Sarah's drama that I almost didn't respond. But curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know what angle Mark was going to come at me with, so I agreed to meet him for coffee. When I showed up at the cafe, Mark was already there, looking a little nervous. We sat down, and after some awkward small talk, he finally got to the point. "Look, man, I know this whole thing with Sarah has been a mess. I just wanted to check in with you and see if there's any way you two could work things out." I almost laughed. "Mark, it's done. There's nothing to work out. She made her choices and I made mine." He looked uncomfortable, like he knew he was about to say something I wasn't going to like. "Yeah, I get that. But here's the thing. Sarah's been talking about how she thinks she made a mistake. And, well, she's been hinting that maybe you guys could try again if you gave it some time." I put my coffee down, trying to keep my cool. "Mark, no offense, but Sarah had her chance. She made a mistake, fine. But she didn't just make a mistake. She ghosted me for weeks. She cut me off like I didn't even exist. That's not something you can just bounce back from." He nodded, but I could tell he wasn't really hearing me. "Yeah, but what if she's serious about fixing things? She's been talking about wanting to make it up to you." I shook my head. "Mark, I appreciate you coming here and trying to help, but it's not going to happen. If Sarah wants to move on, that's fine. But I'm not interested in picking up where we left off." We sat there in awkward silence for a bit after that, both of us kind of knowing that this conversation wasn't going anywhere. Eventually, Mark shrugged and said, "I get it. I just thought I'd give it a shot." I finished my coffee, stood up, and said, "Thanks for trying, man, but it's over. It's time for both of us to move on." He gave me a half-hearted smile, and we said our goodbyes. After that, I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the last of it. I mean, how many people could Sarah possibly send after me, right? Well, apparently I was wrong again, because the very next day, I get a message from Sarah's aunt, of all people. Now I barely knew this woman. We'd met at a couple of family events, exchanged polite small talk, but that was it. So when I saw her name pop up on my phone, I knew something was seriously wrong with Sarah's side of the family. Her aunt starts off by saying how she heard about the breakup and wanted to see how I was doing. At this point, I was so over it that I just straight up asked her, "Did Sarah send you?" Her response? "Well, not exactly, but she's really been struggling, and I thought I could help mediate things between you two." I almost threw my phone across the room. "Mediation?" I texted back. "There's nothing to mediate, we're done. I don't know how much clearer I can make it." She didn't give up, though. She said something about how love is worth fighting for, and how I shouldn't throw away years of a good relationship over a misunderstanding. That's when I realized that Sarah had probably been feeding her family this whole sob story, making it seem like I was the one who overreacted. I didn't even bother replying this time. I blocked her and decided that was it. No more conversations, no more explanations, no more giving people the chance to drag me back into that toxic mess. I was done. For real this time. After that, things finally quieted down. No more texts, no more calls, no more random family members showing up in my inbox trying to guilt me into taking Sarah back. It felt good, like I could finally breathe again without the weight of her drama hanging over me. And honestly, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was actually moving forward. No more waiting for apologies that didn't mean anything, no more wondering what could have been, just me, focusing on what's next. And that's exactly what I needed. Update 3. Alright, so here's how everything finally wrapped up. And yeah, things didn't end quietly, of course. You'd think after blocking Sarah, her mom, her bridesmaids, and pretty much her entire family, things would just die down. Well, that's not what happened. Because Sarah, she decided to make one last move. And it was the one that made me realize just how far she'd go to try and win me back. Or at least get her way. So about a month after everything went down, I get this letter in the mail. Yep, a literal letter, like it's the 1800s or something. I almost didn't open it because who even sends letters anymore? But the handwriting looked familiar, and I figured, why not? Maybe it was some final attempt from Sarah, but honestly, I wasn't expecting anything too crazy. Boy, was I wrong. I opened the letter, and it was this long, handwritten message from Sarah, like pages long. She poured her heart out, saying she missed me, she regretted everything, blah, blah, blah. But here's the kicker. Wait, I can't say that. Here's the wild part. She didn't just say she was sorry. She started talking about how she wanted to meet up again and how she still had the key to my apartment. Let me repeat that. She said she still had the key to my apartment, the same key I had completely forgotten she even had. My stomach dropped. I mean, I'd already changed the locks once when this all started, but I hadn't even thought about the fact that Sarah might still think she had access to my place. I immediately got up, checked the locks, again, and started thinking about what to do next. But that's not all. The letter wasn't just some apology. She was basically laying out a plan for how we could start fresh. She said she'd been talking to her mom about how we should go to couples counseling, and she thought if we could just meet up and talk face to face, we could work things out. At this point, I was more annoyed than anything. Like, she seriously thought this was a good idea? After blocking me, ghosting me, sending her entire family after me, and then acting like I was the one who needed to fix things. I couldn't believe it. But it gets better. Toward the end of the letter, she mentioned that she'd already started making arrangements for us to meet with a counselor. Like she had already booked the appointments without even asking me. The audacity, right? She didn't ask if I was interested, didn't check in with me at all. Just assumed I'd go along with it. I was fuming. I couldn't believe she still didn't get it. After everything, she was still trying to control the situation, still trying to get me to bend to her will. It was like she thought if she just planned everything out, I'd eventually give in. So I sat down and wrote her a letter back. I figured if she wanted to play the old-fashioned game of sending letters, I'd go along with it one last time. But this time, I made things clear. I told her in no uncertain terms that we were done. There was no counseling, no second chances, no meeting up to talk. I told her to return the key, even though I'd already changed the locks again, and that she needed to move on because I sure as hell was. I sent the letter back and felt pretty good about finally shutting that door for good. I thought that was going to be the end of it. But nope. A week later, I get another letter from her. This time it was much shorter. She didn't argue or try to convince me to go to counseling. She just said she understood where I was coming from, but she still thought we should talk. And then she said something that really freaked me out. She mentioned that she'd driven by my apartment a couple of times and saw that I wasn't home. She didn't say why she was driving by or what she was doing, but the fact that she was checking up on me like that sent chills down my spine. At that point, I knew I had to do something more drastic. I wasn't about to let this turn into some creepy stalking situation. I called my landlord and asked about getting extra security, maybe even cameras installed. I wasn't playing around anymore. And just when I thought things couldn't get any weirder, I get a call from my mom. Now my mom knew about everything that had happened, and she'd been super supportive throughout all this. But she called me to say that Sarah had visited her, like, showed up at her house unannounced, asking to talk about us. I almost dropped my phone when she told me that. Sarah had gone to my mom's house to try and get her to convince me to take her back. I was pissed. Not only was Sarah crossing boundaries with me, but now she was dragging my family into it, trying to manipulate the situation through them. My mom, bless her heart, didn't fall for it. She told Sarah that I'd already made my decision and that she needed to respect it. Sarah apparently got emotional and started crying, but my mom didn't back down. She told her that it was time to move on. After that call, I realized I needed to take one final step to end this for good. I filed for a restraining order. I didn't want to, but I felt like I had no choice. Sarah was getting too close, and I needed to protect my space and my family. When Sarah got served with the paperwork, she finally backed off. No more letters, no more visits, nothing. It was like she finally got the message. I didn't feel good about having to go that far, but I knew it was the right thing to do. And honestly, after everything that happened, I learned a lot about myself. I learned that it's okay to stand up for your boundaries, even when people don't want to respect them. I learned that you don't owe anyone endless chances, especially when they've broken your trust. And most importantly, I learned that moving on isn't just about walking away. It's about protecting your peace and your future. So yeah, that's it. That's how it all ended. I'm finally free from all the drama, and I'm moving forward with my life. It wasn't easy, but I made it through. And now, I'm just focused on what's next. No more looking back. Story 3. Friend's sister lied that I got her pregnant. My parents disowned me. Now the truth's out and they're begging. Alright, so here's the deal. My life turned into a complete mess about a year ago, and I've got to get this off my chest. I never thought I'd be here sharing this on Reddit, but I guess that's what happens when your family goes nuts, and you're left standing there like, how did this even happen? Anyway, let me start from the beginning because, trust me, this is one of those situations where you're just like, seriously, what the hell? So, my buddy Dave has a sister, Jenny. I've known them both for years. We all grew up in the same neighborhood, hung out sometimes. Nothing major, right? Jenny was always kind of different. I don't want to sound mean or anything, but she had some mental health stuff going on. I'm not privy to all the details, and honestly, it wasn't my business. Dave never talked much about it, and I didn't pry. But everyone knew Jenny had her struggles. Anyway, about a year ago, out of nowhere, Jenny hits me up and says she's pregnant. Okay, cool, right? Except for one tiny detail. She tells me I'm the dad. And at that moment, I swear, my brain just short-circuited. I was like, wait, what? Now let me be crystal clear about this. I've never even hugged Jenny, let alone been, intimate with her. Not even once. So, for her to come at me with this wild accusation, I couldn't even process it. I told her straight up, Jenny, I don't know what you're talking about, but there's no way I'm the father. We've never been close like that. And she just kept saying it over and over again, like somehow I was going to magically remember a night that never happened. It was bizarre, to say the least. I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe this was part of her mental health struggles or something, but deep down I was freaking out. Now this is where things start going off the rails. Jenny refuses to take a prenatal paternity test. I'm sitting there thinking, if you're so sure it's my kid, why wouldn't you just take the test and prove it? But she wouldn't budge. She kept saying stuff like, you need to be there for your child, and you're abandoning us before the baby's even born. It was guilt trip city, and I wasn't buying it. So I made it clear. If she wasn't going to take the test, I wasn't going to sign anything. I wasn't about to get legally tied to a kid that wasn't mine. Simple, right? I thought that would be the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. Cue the family drama. A few weeks after that, my parents find out. Now, I love my parents, but they have this whole traditional values thing going on. And the second they hear about the situation, they lose it. Like, completely lose it. They're calling me names, saying I'm a deadbeat and a disgrace. And I'm just standing there trying to get a word in, but they're not listening. I told them, Mom, Dad, this isn't my kid. Jenny's just making stuff up. But they weren't having it. It's like once they got it in their heads that I was responsible for this baby, they couldn't shake it. There were a lot of nasty arguments after that. Things were said that I probably can't take back, and honestly, I'm still mad about it. My parents kept pushing me to do the right thing and step up as a father, even though I kept telling them it wasn't my kid. It didn't matter to them. In their eyes, I was already guilty. They said they didn't raise me to be some kind of deadbeat, and they couldn't believe I would deny my own child. Here's where things get even crazier. I wasn't even in the same state when Jenny would have gotten pregnant. That's right, she was staying at a friend's place for an entire month when she supposedly conceived. I brought this up to my parents, and they just brushed it off. People make mistakes, they said. Yeah, well, this wasn't just a mistake. This was a full-blown accusation that could wreck my life. Fast forward to about 6 months into Jenny's pregnancy. By this point, the whole family has turned against me. Every family dinner, every phone call, every text, it's all about how I need to man up and take responsibility for this baby. I was losing my mind. It was like I was in some nightmare, and no matter what I said or did, nobody believed me. My friends were mostly on my side, thankfully, but even a couple of them started questioning things like, "Are you sure, man? Maybe you don't remember something?" Finally, my parents dropped the ultimate bomb on me. If I don't step up and act like a father, they're cutting me out of their lives, disowning me, kicking me to the curb. At first, I thought they were bluffing, but nope, they were dead serious. They told me flat out that if I didn't go along with this, I was no longer welcome in the family. And sure enough, when I didn't cave, they disowned me. Let me tell you, that hurt. I was pissed off, confused, and just plain hurt. These were the people who raised me, who were supposed to have my back, and they chose to believe someone else over me. My own family threw me out like I didn't matter. It was brutal. Things got even weirder after the baby was born. My mom was there at the hospital playing the role of proud grandma. I didn't even know until later. Jenny still wouldn't take the paternity test, so I had to go through some legal stuff to get it done. When the results came in, guess what? Not my kid. 0% chance I was the father. And as soon as I got that paper in my hand, I felt this wave of relief and anger all at once. I sent the results to my parents thinking, finally they'll see the truth. They'll realize they were wrong and everything will go back to normal. Nope. Instead, they started blowing up my phone with apologies, offers of money, and begging me to forgive them. My dad even sent me a few $100 in the mail like that was going to fix things. But here's the thing, I kept the money. Yeah, I took it. I felt like they owed me for all the crap they put me through. But forgive them? No way. I made it clear that if they were willing to disown me over something like this, I wasn't going to risk opening myself up to that kind of betrayal again. Most of my friends were on my side, but a few, along with my therapist, started saying things like, maybe you should give them another chance. They're your parents after all. And I get it. I really do. But how do you just forgive someone who was ready to throw you away so easily? How do you trust someone who believed a lie over their own child? That's where I'm at now. Stuck between knowing I did nothing wrong and wondering if I should even bother trying to fix things with my family. But every time I think about it, I remember how quickly they turned on me, and I can't shake the feeling that they failed me when I needed them the most. All right, so after everything that went down with my parents and Jenny's baby drama, you'd think things would calm down, right? Nope. Life had other plans for me. If anything, the whole mess just kept spiraling. You'd think proving I wasn't the dad would have been the end of it, but man, I wish it was that simple. Turns out, when people don't want to admit they messed up, they'll do anything to avoid taking responsibility. So, after the paternity test results came in and confirmed I wasn't the father, I thought, all right, now my parents will realize they were wrong and maybe things can get back to normal. But instead of the relief I was expecting, things got way more complicated. First off, Jenny completely lost it. She started spreading rumors around town that I had faked the test or somehow tampered with it. Yeah, you read that right. In her mind, I had somehow convinced a whole lab to rig the results in my favor. Like, how would I even do that? I'm just a regular guy. I'm not some mastermind who knows how to manipulate DNA tests. But Jenny wasn't hearing any of it. She was dead set on making me the bad guy in her story. She went around telling people that I was abandoning her and the baby, that I'd tricked everyone into thinking I wasn't the dad. It didn't make sense, but it didn't matter. People started to believe her. Small-town rumors spread fast, and soon I had folks giving me dirty looks at the grocery store like I was some kind of scumbag. I even had people straight up confront me, asking why I wasn't stepping up to take care of my kid. It was infuriating. I had the test results to prove I wasn't the father, but no one seemed to care. Jenny was out there playing the victim, and I was getting blamed for something I had no part in. I'd never felt so helpless in my life. It's one thing when your family turns on you, but when the whole town starts thinking you're the bad guy, that hits different. And my parents? Well, they were still trying to play nice, but it was clear they didn't know how to handle the situation either. My mom kept calling, leaving these long emotional voicemails about how she just wanted her family back together. She didn't even address what had happened. She just wanted to sweep everything under the rug like nothing had ever gone down. She even suggested I come over for dinner, like that was going to magically fix all the damage they'd done. It wasn't just awkward, it was insulting. After everything they put me through, they thought a few family dinners and some fake smiles would make it all okay. No apology, no acknowledgement of how badly they messed up. Just, let's move on. It was like they didn't even realize how much trust they had shattered. And that's the thing. Once trust is broken like that, it's not something you can just patch up with a meal and a hug. It takes real work, real effort to rebuild, and they weren't even willing to admit they were wrong. The kicker came when my dad tried to bribe me. He straight up sent me an email offering to buy me a new car if I would come back to the family. Like, what? They think they can just buy my forgiveness? It was so out of touch with reality that I didn't even know how to respond. I just stared at the email for a while, trying to figure out if this was some kind of sick joke. But nope, my dad was serious. I didn't respond. I couldn't. What do you even say to something like that? They didn't care about fixing things the right way. They just wanted me back in their lives because it was convenient for them. And the fact that they thought throwing money at me would solve everything, it made me realize how little they actually understood what they'd done. But the worst part came later, when I found out Jenny had started reaching out to people I knew, trying to drag them into her drama. She even contacted my ex-girlfriend, Samantha, and tried to convince her that I was this terrible person who had abandoned his kid. Sam and I hadn't spoken in years, but out of the blue, I get a text from her saying, "We need to talk." At first, I had no idea what she was talking about, but when she explained that Jenny had been messaging her, trying to stir up old drama, I just about lost it. I called Jenny and told her to stop. I was done with the games, done with the lies, and I wasn't going to let her drag my friends and exes into her mess. But she just laughed and hung up on me. It was like talking to a wall. She was so wrapped up in her fantasy world that nothing I said would get through to her. At this point, I was seriously considering getting a lawyer involved. I didn't want to take it that far, but what choice did I have? Jenny was out here ruining my reputation. My parents were enabling her behavior, and I felt like I had no one in my corner. My closest friends supported me, sure, but even they didn't know the full extent of how bad things had gotten. Eventually, I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep living in this constant state of stress, waiting for the next rumor to pop up or the next crazy accusation to come my way. I decided to cut ties completely, not just with Jenny, but with my parents too. It wasn't easy. It sucked, actually, but I knew I couldn't keep letting them drag me down. I wrote my parents a long email explaining everything, how I felt betrayed, how they had failed me, how I couldn't trust them anymore. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them straight up that I wasn't ready to forgive them, and I didn't know if I ever would be. I told them that if they wanted any chance at a relationship with me in the future, they'd have to start by actually apologizing and taking responsibility for their actions. No more pretending everything was fine, no more sweeping things under the rug. As for Jenny, I blocked her on everything. I couldn't deal with her manipulations anymore. She wasn't my problem, and I wasn't going to let her keep dragging me into her mess. I even had to tell Dave, her brother, that I couldn't be around his family for a while. That was tough because Dave's always been a good friend, but I had to put my own well-being first. It's been a few months since I cut them off, and honestly, it's been a relief. Sure, there are days when I feel guilty or second-guess myself, but overall, I know I made the right call. Sometimes you have to walk away, even when it's hard. And yeah, it's messy and complicated, but at least now I'm not constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next disaster to hit. I can finally breathe again. But man, if you told me a year ago that this is where I'd end up, I never would have believed you. Life's funny like that, I guess. Update 1. Alright, so here's where things get even weirder. I thought cutting ties with Jenny and my parents would be the end of the chaos. Like I figured once I removed them from my life, everything would calm down and I could move on. But of course, things don't work out that easily. Cutting them off? That was just the beginning of a whole new mess. A couple of weeks after I sent that email to my parents and blocked Jenny, I get this unexpected message from an old high school friend, Mike. We hadn't talked in years, but out of nowhere, he's asking if I'm doing okay. At first I'm thinking, okay, that's random, but then he tells me that my parents reached out to him. Now Mike and I weren't even that close back in the day, so for my parents to contact him, That was a huge red flag. Apparently, they'd been going around trying to get people to talk to me on their behalf. I'm talking old friends, distant relatives, even people I barely know. They were telling everyone that I was in a bad place and that they were worried about me. It was like they were trying to make me seem like the one who was unstable. And the worst part? They were framing the whole thing as if I was the one who needed to apologize for cutting them off. Mike was cool about it. He knew something was up and wanted to give me a heads up, but it didn't stop there. Over the next few days, I started getting messages from all sorts of people. People I hadn't spoken to in years. People I'd only met a few times. They were all saying the same thing. Your parents are really worried about you. Or, you should give them another chance. It was insane. They had somehow convinced all these people that I was the bad guy in this situation, that I had gone off the rails and needed to make amends. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, just trying to move on with my life, and my parents were out here doing a full-on PR campaign, trying to make me look like the villain. I felt like I was in some kind of weird alternate reality where nothing made sense. No matter how much I tried to stay away from the drama, it just kept finding its way back to me. The final straw came when they reached out to my boss. Yeah, you heard that right. My parents called my job. I don't even know how they got the number, but they somehow tracked down my boss's contact info and called the office, telling him they were concerned about me and that I wasn't in the right headspace. Can you imagine how humiliating that was? My boss pulled me into his office one day, looking all serious, and asked if everything was okay at home. I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say at first. Like, what do you say when your boss is asking if your parents think you've gone off the deep end? I explained the whole situation to him, and luckily, he was super understanding about it. He even apologized for bringing it up, but man, the damage was done. My own parents were out there trying to mess with my job now. It felt like they were determined to ruin everything for me, just because I wouldn't bend to their will. After that, I had no choice. I went to a lawyer and started the process of getting a restraining order against them. I didn't want to take things that far, but what choice did I have? They were messing with my career, my friends, my peace of mind. I had to protect myself, even if it meant legally cutting them off. The process was long and stressful. There were court dates, paperwork, and just a whole lot of anxiety that came with it. But at the same time, I felt a weird sense of relief. Like finally, I was taking control of the situation. No more letting them invade every part of my life. No more letting them manipulate the narrative. Of course, when they found out about the restraining order, all hell broke loose. My mom sent me this long, guilt-trippy email about how she never imagined her own son would do this, and how family is supposed to stick together no matter what. She kept saying that I was tearing the family apart, that I was the one causing all the pain. It was textbook manipulation, but I didn't bite. I didn't respond. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but things got even worse before they got better. One day I came home from work to find my car vandalized. Someone had keyed the word liar into the side of it. I had no proof it was my parents, but come on, who else would it be? I hadn't told anyone about the restraining order except for a few close friends. My parents were the only ones who had a motive to pull something like that. It was like they couldn't handle losing control, so they had to lash out in whatever way they could. I filed a police report, but nothing ever came of it. Just another reminder that even when you try to do things the right way, sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can turn into your worst enemies. I started parking my car at a friend's house after that, just to be safe. I couldn't take any more chances. I even installed security cameras around my apartment, just in case they tried something else. It felt like I was living in a constant state of paranoia, always waiting for the next shoe to drop. But eventually, things started to calm down. The restraining order went through, and my parents were officially barred from contacting me or coming anywhere near my home or workplace. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could finally breathe. It's been a few months now, and I'm still picking up the pieces. I had to do a lot of damage control with my friends and coworkers, explaining the whole situation to them and making sure they knew the truth. Most of them were supportive, but a few were skeptical, like, "Are you sure your parents would really go that far?" I get it, it's hard to believe. But when you've lived through it, you know how far some people will go when they feel like they're losing control. Looking back, I never imagined things would get this bad. It's crazy how quickly family can turn on you when you refuse to play by their rules. But I've learned something important through all of this. You can't let anyone, not even your family, dictate how you live your life. Sometimes you have to make the hard choice to walk away, even when it hurts. I don't know what the future holds for me and my parents. Maybe one day they'll realize what they did and apologize for real. Maybe not. But either way, I'm done letting them control my life. I've got my own path to follow, and I'm not looking back. Update 2. Alright, so here's where things take a bit of a turn. After I finally got the restraining order and started trying to rebuild my life, I thought things would finally settle down. But, surprise, surprise, life had other plans. Just when I was beginning to feel like I could breathe again, my parents found a new way to mess with me. This time, it wasn't direct contact. It wasn't vandalizing my car or sending emails. No, this was a whole different level of messed up. So one day, I'm sitting at home, just minding my own business, when I get a letter in the mail. Nothing too weird about that, right? Except this letter is from a lawyer. At first, I thought it was something related to the restraining order, maybe some final paperwork or something. But nope, it was a lawsuit. My own parents were suing me. For what, you ask? Emotional distress. I couldn't even believe what I was reading. They were actually suing me for cutting them off, saying that my actions had caused them severe emotional damage and that they were entitled to compensation. They even claimed I had alienated them from the rest of the family, which was complete nonsense because they were the ones who isolated me, not the other way around. I sat there for a good few minutes, just staring at the letter, trying to process what was happening. I mean, who does that? Who sues their own kid because they're mad they got cut off? I didn't even know what to do. Part of me wanted to laugh at how ridiculous it all was, but another part of me was seriously stressed out. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was legal, and it was about to get real messy. I called my lawyer immediately. I couldn't handle this on my own. She was just as shocked as I was. She'd seen plenty of messy family cases, but suing your own kid for emotional distress? That was new even for her. We went over the details of the lawsuit, and while most of it was clearly bogus, I knew we couldn't just ignore it. They were serious, and that meant I had to fight back. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and stress. I had to gather all the evidence of everything that had happened: the paternity test results, the restraining order, the harassment I'd been dealing with. My lawyer was confident we could win, but it still felt surreal that it had come to this. My own parents were trying to drag me through the mud in court, all because I refused to let them control me anymore. But here's the thing. They didn't stop at just the lawsuit. Oh no. They had to take it a step further. They started reaching out to other family members, trying to turn them against me. I started getting messages from aunts, uncles, cousins, all people I hadn't heard from in years. They were all saying the same thing. Why can't you just make peace with your parents? Or, family is everything. You're being selfish. It was like they'd been brainwashed into thinking I was the villain in all of this. I was furious. Not just at my parents, but at the whole situation. It felt like no matter what I did, no matter how much I tried to protect myself, they always found a way to twist the narrative and make me look like the bad guy. I mean, how do you explain to someone who's only hearing one side of the story that your parents are suing you for emotional distress because you enforced boundaries? It got to the point where I had to cut off even more people. I blocked family members, unfriended people on social media, and just shut down any connection to that side of my life. It wasn't because I didn't care about them, I did. But I couldn't keep explaining myself over and over again to people who had already made up their minds. It was exhausting, and I was done trying to justify my decisions to people who weren't willing to see the bigger picture. Eventually, the court date rolled around. I showed up with my lawyer, prepared for whatever nonsense they were going to throw at me. And let me tell you, it was a circus. My parents had this whole sob story lined up about how they'd always been there for me, how they'd tried to help me through tough times, and how I had cruelly cut them off without reason. They painted themselves as the victims in all of this, which was honestly impressive considering they were the ones who disowned me in the first place. But my lawyer wasn't having it. She tore their arguments apart piece by piece, showing the judge all the evidence of their harassment, the restraining order, the paternity test, everything. It was brutal, and by the end of it, you could see the judge wasn't buying their story. The judge ruled in my favor, obviously. The lawsuit was thrown out, and my parents were ordered to pay my legal fees, which was a small victory in the grand scheme of things. But even though I won, it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like I had just barely escaped a nightmare, and there was still so much fallout to deal with. After the case, my parents tried one last-ditch effort to get back into my life. They sent me this long, emotional letter about how they were sorry for everything, how they just wanted to make things right, and how they couldn't bear to lose me. It was the same old guilt-tripping nonsense they'd been pulling from the start. And honestly, I didn't even respond. I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going back. There's only so much someone can take before they have to walk away for good. And yeah, it hurt. Cutting off your family isn't easy, no matter how bad things get. but sometimes it's necessary for your own sanity. I couldn't keep letting them drag me into their chaos, no matter how much they claimed to love me. Their version of love was toxic, and I wasn't going to let it poison my life anymore. So, that's where I'm at now. The lawsuit's behind me, the restraining order's still in place, and I'm moving forward. It hasn't been easy, but I'm learning how to live without all the noise, without the constant stress of wondering when the next disaster is going to hit. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I have some control over my life. And that feels pretty damn good. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day things will change, maybe they won't. But right now I'm focusing on myself, on rebuilding the parts of my life that they tried to tear down. It's been a long road, but I'm finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Update 3. Alright, so if you've been keeping up with everything so far, you'd think after the lawsuit mess and the restraining order, that'd be the end of the madness. But nope, my family found a way to surprise me one last time. And this one? Honestly, it left me shaking my head because I didn't think they could sink any lower. But here we are. So, a couple of months after the court ruled in my favor, things had finally started to calm down. I had cut ties with everyone causing me stress. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I could actually focus on rebuilding my life. No random messages from old friends, no letters from lawyers, just peace. Or at least, that's what I thought. One day, I'm out running some errands, just doing normal stuff like grocery shopping, when I bump into my cousin Melissa. Now, Melissa and I hadn't talked much during all this drama. We were never super close growing up, but we'd always gotten along. So when I saw her, I figured, why not say hi? We ended up chatting for a bit, and at first it was pretty normal. You know, catching up on life, work, the usual stuff. But then, out of nowhere, she hits me with, "Hey, did you hear what your parents are planning?" I froze. "Planning?" I asked, suddenly feeling that familiar pit in my stomach. Melissa looked a little uncomfortable, like she wasn't sure if she should even be telling me. But she sighed and went on, "Yeah, they're throwing a big family reunion next month. Apparently, they've been telling everyone they're hoping it'll be a reconciliation thing between you and them." I couldn't believe it. They were seriously planning some kind of ambush reunion to try and force me back into the family? I asked Melissa for more details, and it turned out they were inviting everyone, distant relatives, family friends, people I hadn't seen in years. And the kicker? They'd been telling everyone that I'd be there, acting like I was in on this whole thing. I was furious. I hadn't agreed to anything, and now they were setting me up to look like the bad guy if I didn't show up. It was another classic move from my parents. Manipulate the situation, make me look like the villain, and try to guilt-trip me into doing what they wanted. I thanked Melissa for letting me know and told her straight up that I wasn't going. She understood, but even she seemed a little torn, like she was buying into my parents' "we just want to fix things" narrative. I could see it in her face. She wanted me to go, to make things right. But after everything they'd done, there was no way I was walking into that trap. I went home that night and thought long and hard about what to do. I knew I wasn't going to the reunion, but part of me felt like I needed to say something. I couldn't just ignore this. So I decided to send one final message to my parents, laying everything out once and for all. The next morning, I sat down and wrote them an email. It wasn't long, but it was direct. I told them that I knew about the reunion and that I wasn't coming. I made it clear that I didn't want to be a part of any reconciliation that was being forced on me, especially not in front of a crowd of people. I told them that if they really cared about fixing things, they'd have to start by respecting my boundaries. And until they could do that, there was nothing more to talk about. I didn't expect a response, and honestly, I didn't need one. I just needed to set the record straight one last time. But of course, my parents couldn't just let it go. A few days later, my dad called me. I didn't pick up, but he left this long, rambling voicemail about how I was tearing the family apart, and how this reunion was supposed to be a fresh start for all of us. He even tried to guilt me by saying, "Your grandparents would be so disappointed in how you're handling this." That voicemail hit me hard, not because I believed it, but because it reminded me of all the times my parents had used guilt and manipulation to get their way. They'd pull any card they could to make me feel like I was the problem, even if it meant dragging my grandparents into it. People who had always been supportive of me, by the way. It was like they couldn't accept that maybe, just maybe, they were the ones who needed to take a long, hard look at themselves. I didn't respond to the voicemail. What was the point? I'd said my piece, and I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their drama. But that didn't mean it didn't weigh on me. For days after that, I kept thinking about the reunion, about all the relatives who were going to be there, thinking I was just refusing to make peace. I wondered how many of them actually knew the full story, How many were getting the twisted version my parents were feeding them? The reunion came and went, and I didn't hear a word from my parents afterward. I saw some photos on Facebook, happy faces, family hugs, the whole deal. My parents were smiling, acting like everything was fine, like they hadn't just spent the last year trying to destroy my life. It was weird, seeing them like that, pretending everything was perfect. But I guess that's what they were always good at, pretending. A few weeks later, I ran into Melissa again, and she told me the reunion had been awkward. Apparently, a lot of people had expected me to show up, and when I didn't, there were some uncomfortable conversations. My parents had tried to explain my absence, but from what Melissa said, it didn't go over well. A few relatives even started questioning why I wasn't there and why my parents hadn't been more honest about the whole situation. I guess not everyone was buying their story after all, and that, I guess, is where things stand now. I've managed to distance myself from the drama, but I know it's always lurking there, just beneath the surface. My parents will probably never admit they were wrong, and I've accepted that. I can't change them. But what I can do is protect myself, keep building my life without their influence, and focus on the people who actually care about me for real. It's been a long road, and I'm not going to lie, it still hurts sometimes. Cutting off your family isn't easy, and there are days when I wonder if I did the right thing. But deep down, I know I had to. I had to choose myself, my mental health, and my own future over the toxic cycle they kept trying to drag me into. So yeah, that's the end of this wild ride. Maybe one day things will change, maybe they won't. But either way, I'm done letting my family control my life. I've got my own path to walk now, and for the first time in a long time, I'm walking it on my own terms. Story 4. This story is titled, I Paid Bills at Home, but Mom moved her friend and kids into my room. So I left, and now she's begging me back. Hey everyone! If you're enjoying these stories and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It helps me bring you even more awesome content like this. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, living at home at 23 isn't exactly what I had planned for my life, but it worked out for the most part. I wasn't freeloading or anything. I paid rent, covered the electricity bill, and even paid for my mom's phone plan. It's not like I was just lying around eating snacks and playing video games. Honestly, the deal was pretty good. I had my own space, got home-cooked meals, and could focus on my freelance work without worrying too much about big expenses. I had even turned my room into a mini studio for my content creation gigs, which I was hoping would take off soon. Everything was fine until my mom's best friend Kelly moved in with her 2 kids. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I understood the situation. Kelly was going through a nasty divorce, and her husband, according to my mom, was a complete jerk. They needed somewhere to stay, and our house was their best option. I thought it would be temporary, just a few weeks until Kelly got back on her feet. At first, they stayed in the guest room, and it wasn't a big deal. Sure, the kids were a little loud, but I just closed my door and put on my headphones. It wasn't ideal, but I could manage. The guest room wasn't huge, but it was enough for Kelly and her kids to crash in for a while. I figured that was the arrangement, and I didn't give it much thought. That changed fast. One day, I came home after running some errands and noticed something weird right away. My door was open, and I could hear kids laughing inside. When I walked in, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My bed was covered in toys, my desk chair was moved, and one of the kids was on my computer. My studio setup, my expensive microphone, lighting, and camera was shoved to the corner of the room like it didn't matter. Kelly's kids were running around like they owned the place, and all my stuff was just out of place. I yelled, "What the hell is going on?" Probably louder than I should have, but I was in shock. My mom walked in and immediately started scolding me, like I was the one out of line. She said, "Calm your tits, it's not a big deal. The kids needed more space and your room is the biggest. It's only fair." Fair? My room? The one I was paying rent for? I told her I wanted them out of my room immediately, but she brushed me off like I was being ridiculous. "They need to be comfortable," she said. "You're being selfish." Selfish? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't about comfort. It was about respect. My room wasn't just a place I slept in. It was where I worked. My studio setup had cost me over $3,000, and it wasn't something I could just throw into a corner and ignore. I explained all of this, but my mom wasn't having it. "They're just kids," she said, "and they want to play on your computer. Stop making such a fuss." I shut that idea down immediately. "No way are they touching my equipment," I said. "If anything happens to it, I'm screwed." That's when Kelly chimed in. She said, "Oh, come on. They're just curious, and you can't blame them. Maybe if you weren't so uptight, they'd listen to you." I was stunned. Uptight? I wasn't uptight. I was trying to protect my stuff. Stuff I worked hard for. I told her flat out that the kids weren't allowed to touch my things, and if they did, I'd hold her responsible. That didn't go over well. She called me selfish too, and my mom agreed with her. It was like I was suddenly the bad guy in my own home. After that first blow-up, things in the house got tense. I couldn't believe my mom and Kelly were siding against me, especially when I was the one paying rent, but I figured they'd realize how ridiculous this was after they calmed down. The next day, I tried talking to my mom again. I explained how much my studio equipment meant to me, not just financially, but professionally. Freelancing isn't just some hobby, it's my job. Without my gear, I couldn't do my work, and replacing it would take me months, maybe even years to save up for. I told her, Mom, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but this isn't fair. I'm paying rent for that room, and you just gave it away without even asking me. Her response? You're being dramatic. It's my house, and I decide what happens in it. I was stunned. Your house? I pay rent. I'm contributing here, not just squatting for free. She shrugged like it didn't matter. The kids need space. Your brother's room is too small, and your sister's room is full of her things. Besides, your room has all that fancy stuff and they like it better. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My siblings, both 15, had rooms that were perfectly fine. Sure, my brother's room was smaller, but it was big enough for 2 kids. My sister's room was almost as big as mine, and honestly, she barely used it since she was always out with her friends. But my mom wouldn't even consider it. The kids love your room because it's cooler, she said. All your fancy gadgets make it more fun for them. Fun? This wasn't about fun. My room wasn't some playhouse for Kelly's kids to mess around in. It was where I worked, where I relaxed, where I lived. I told her, if they break anything, are you going to replace it? Because I can't afford to. That's when Kelly chimed in again. Oh, stop being so paranoid. They're kids, not monsters. If you'd just let them play, they'd probably leave your stuff alone, I snapped. Let them play? On my $3,000 setup? Are you serious? No way. Kelly rolled her eyes and said, You're being selfish. This is a hard time for us, and you're making it all about you. At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned to my mom and said, If they're staying in my room, I need to move my stuff out. I can't risk them damaging it. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, Where are you going to put it? There's no space anywhere else. So I'm just supposed to let them trash my stuff? I asked, my voice rising. How is that fair? My mom just shook her head. Life isn't fair. You're an adult. You should be able to handle a little inconvenience. A little inconvenience? Being kicked out of my own room wasn't a little inconvenience. It was disrespectful. I was paying rent for that space, and now I couldn't even use it. And on top of that, I wasn't allowed to go into my room anymore. My mom said it was their space now and that I had no right to barge in. For the next few days, I tried to stay out of the house as much as possible. I'd hang out at coffee shops trying to get work done on my laptop, but it wasn't the same. Without my studio setup, my productivity tanked. I was falling behind on deadlines and my stress levels were through the roof. I tried one last time to reason with my mom. Look, I said, I'll make a deal. Let me move my setup into the guest room and they can stay in my room. That way, I can still work and they can have the space they need. She didn't even think about it. The guest room is too cramped for all your stuff. You'll just have to wait until Kelly gets back on her feet. How long is that going to take? I asked, frustrated. She shrugged. As long as it takes. You don't get to set deadlines for other people's struggles. I couldn't believe this was happening. It wasn't like I hated Kelly or her kids. I understood they were going through a rough time, and I was willing to help. But this wasn't helping. It was enabling. Kelly wasn't paying anything to stay with us, and now I was basically being pushed out of my own life to accommodate them. Later that night, I overheard Kelly talking to my mom in the kitchen. She was complaining about me, calling me selfish and immature. She said, He doesn't even understand how hard this is for us. He's just being a brat. My mom agreed, saying, He's always been stubborn. He'll get over it. That was the final straw. I realized they didn't care about me or my situation. I was just a paycheck to my mom and a roadblock to Kelly and her kids. They weren't going to listen, and they weren't going to change. The next day, I started looking for rooms to rent. It wasn't an easy decision. I loved living at home, despite the occasional drama. It was affordable, and I got along with my siblings. But I couldn't stay in a place where I wasn't respected. After days of feeling like a stranger in my own home, I decided enough was enough. It wasn't just about the room anymore. It was about respect. I was paying rent, contributing to bills, and trying to build a future for myself, but none of that seemed to matter to my mom or Kelly. They had decided my needs came last, and I was tired of it. One night, I sat my mom down in the living room. My siblings were upstairs, and Kelly was putting her kids to bed, so it was just the two of us. I figured if I could make her see how serious I was, she'd finally listen. Mom, I started, keeping my voice calm. We need to talk. She gave me a tired look. What now? I can't keep living like this, I said. I've been paying rent for that room, and now I can't even use it. You gave it away without asking me, and it's not fair. She sighed and leaned back on the couch. We've been over this. It's temporary. Kelly and the kids are going through a hard time. You're young, and you can adapt. That's not the point, I shot back. It's not about adapting. It's about respect. You didn't ask me. You just decided my room wasn't mine anymore. And now I can't even work because all my stuff is packed up or shoved into a corner. You're being dramatic, she said, waving me off. This is my house, and I get to decide what happens in it. That line again. Every time she said it, it felt like a slap in the face. If this is your house, I said, then why am I paying rent? If you're going to treat me like a guest, maybe I shouldn't be paying anything at all. Her eyes narrowed. Don't you dare pull that. You know I need your help with the bills. Then treat me like I matter, I snapped. You can't take my money every month and then turn around and tell me I have no say. That's not how this works. She looked at me like I was crazy. What do you want me to do? Throw Kelly and her kids out on the street? They have nowhere else to go. I shook my head. No, but there are other options. They could stay in the guest room, or they could move into one of my siblings' rooms. Hell, you could even rotate rooms so everyone takes turns sharing the space. But taking my room and locking me out of it? That's not okay. She crossed her arms. Your brother and sister are too young to share their rooms, and the guest room is too small for 3 people. Your room was the best option. No, it was the easiest option, I said. You didn't want to deal with the hassle, so you dumped it on me. At that point, I could feel my frustration boiling over. I'll make this simple, I said, looking her straight in the eye. Either Kelly and the kids move out of my room, or I move out of the house. Those are your options. She blinked, caught off guard. Don't be ridiculous. Where would you even go? I've already started looking for rooms to rent, I told her. If you're not going to respect me or the fact that I'm paying to live here, then I'll find somewhere else to live. She scoffed. You're bluffing. You can't afford to move out. I leaned back and crossed my arms. Try me. The next few days were tense. I didn't bring up the ultimatum again, but it hung in the air like a storm cloud. My mom didn't take me seriously, which just made me more determined. I spent every spare moment scrolling through rental listings, messaging landlords, and figuring out my budget. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I could make it work if I cut back on non-essentials. Meanwhile, things at home were worse than ever. Kelly's kids had turned my room into their personal playground, and I couldn't do anything about it. I wasn't even allowed to step inside without someone throwing a fit. Once I tried to grab a few things I'd left behind, a pair of headphones and some books, and Kelly snapped at me. What are you doing in here? She demanded, standing in the doorway with her hands on her hips. I need my stuff, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She shook her head. You can't just barge in whenever you want. This is their room now. I stared at her, speechless. Are you kidding me? This is my room. Not anymore, she said, her tone icy. You need to respect their space. Respect their space? The irony nearly made me laugh. I'm paying rent for this room, I said, through gritted teeth. I'll grab my stuff and leave, but don't tell me to respect their space when no one respects mine. She muttered something under her breath and walked away, but the damage was done. That was the moment I realized there was no fixing this. My mom wasn't going to back me up, and Kelly wasn't going to change. If I wanted things to get better, I'd have to take matters into my own hands. A week after the ultimatum, I found a room for rent that I could afford. It wasn't anything fancy, a small place in an older building, but it was mine. The landlord was friendly, and the space was clean enough. Most importantly, I could set up my studio without worrying about kids touching my equipment. I didn't tell my mom right away. I wanted to make sure everything was finalized before I dropped the bombshell. When I signed the lease, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Moving out wasn't what I had planned, but staying wasn't an option anymore. I had to put myself first, even if it meant leaving behind the home I'd grown up in. The next step was moving my stuff out. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, especially with my mom and Kelly breathing down my neck, but I didn't care anymore. I was done playing nice. Once I signed the lease for my new place, I knew I had to act fast. If I gave my mom too much notice, she'd find a way to make the move even harder. So I planned it out carefully. I told a few close friends what was going on, and 2 of them agreed to help me pack and move my stuff. One of them even offered to record everything on their phone, just in case things got ugly. The night before the move, I sat down with my mom one last time. I wanted to give her one final chance to make things right. Mom, I started, keeping my voice calm. I've found a place to rent, and I'm moving out tomorrow. She looked up from her phone, surprised. You're really doing this? Yeah, I said, nodding. You didn't leave me much choice. She rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. This whole thing is temporary. You're leaving over nothing. It's not nothing, I said firmly. You gave away my room, locked me out of it, and told me I didn't have a say in the matter. I'm paying rent, and you treated me like I was just disposable. She sighed, like I was exhausting her. You know I need your rent money to keep this house running. If you leave, how am I supposed to pay the bills? I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. That's not my problem anymore, I said. You made it clear that this isn't my house. You said it's your house, your rules. Well, if that's the case, then I don't have to stay here. She glared at me. So you're just going to leave us high and dry? I shrugged. You can ask Kelly to start paying rent, or her husband since they're still married. I don't owe you anything. She didn't say anything after that, just gave me a cold look and went back to her phone. I took that as my cue to leave. The next day, my friends showed up bright and early with a couple of cars and a rented van. We were ready to get everything done as quickly as possible. I'd already packed most of my stuff into boxes, but I still had to get my studio set up out of my old room. When we got to the house, Kelly and her kids were already awake. The kids were running around the living room, and Kelly was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. She gave me a suspicious look as soon as I walked in. What's going on? She asked, narrowing her eyes. I'm moving out, I said simply. Her eyebrows shot up. Seriously? You're leaving because of this? That's pathetic. I ignored her and headed upstairs to my room, or what used to be my room. When I opened the door, the sight almost made me sick. My bed was covered in stuffed animals and toys, and my desk was piled high with random junk. My computer, microphone, and camera were shoved into a corner, looking like they hadn't been touched in weeks. I turned to one of my friends. Start recording. He pulled out his phone and began filming as I carefully started packing up my equipment. Kelly must have realized what was happening because she came upstairs and started yelling. You can't just barge in here and start taking stuff, she shouted. This is their room now. I turned to her, trying to stay calm. It's my stuff, Kelly. I paid for it, and I'm taking it with me. She crossed her arms. You're being ridiculous. You're throwing a tantrum over a couple of kids needing space. This isn't a tantrum, I said, my voice steady. This is me standing up for myself. You and my mom have treated me like I don't matter, and I'm done with it. She started yelling again, but I tuned her out and kept packing. My friends helped me load everything into the van while one of them kept filming, just in case Kelly or my mom tried to pull something. By the time we finished, my mom had come upstairs to see what was going on. When she saw the empty room, she flipped out. You're really doing this? She asked, her voice shaking with anger. You're leaving us just because you didn't get your way? I looked her straight in the eye. I'm leaving because you didn't respect me. I paid rent for this room, and you gave it away without even asking. You made it clear that I'm not a priority here, so I'm making myself a priority. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. Don't. I've made my decision. As I carried the last box out to the van, Kelly stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, glaring at me. Good luck out there, she said sarcastically. You're going to realize how selfish you've been when things get hard. I didn't even bother responding. I just climbed into the van and drove off with my friends. That night, after I'd moved into my new place and started unpacking, my phone blew up with texts from my mom. She was furious, saying I was selfish and inconsiderate for leaving her in a tough spot. She accused me of abandoning the family and leaving her to deal with the bills on her own. You've always been so selfish, one text read. I can't believe you'd do this to me after everything I've done for you. I typed out a response but deleted it. I didn't owe her an explanation. She'd made her choices, and now I was making mine. After moving into my new place, the first thing I felt was relief. No more fighting, no more disrespect, and most importantly, no more feeling like I didn't matter. Sure, my new room was smaller, and the building wasn't exactly top-notch, but it was quiet, and it was mine. I unpacked my studio equipment first, carefully setting it up in the corner of my room. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe, but the peace didn't last long. My mom started texting me the next morning, blowing up my phone with message after message. She wanted to know if I'd paid rent for the month yet, and when I told her I wasn't paying since I had moved out, she lost it. You haven't even reached the 25th yet, she texted. You owe me for the rest of this month. I rolled my eyes. No, I don't, I replied. I'm not living there anymore, so I'm not paying rent. You can ask Kelly to cover it. Her response came almost instantly. Kelly doesn't have money to pay rent. You know that. You're leaving me to handle everything on my own, and I can't afford it. That's not my problem, I texted back. You made it clear that it's your house, your rules. Well, now it's your bills, your responsibility. She didn't like that answer. She started calling me selfish, immature, and ungrateful. According to her, I was tearing the family apart by leaving. At first, the guilt started creeping in. I'd always helped out financially, and I knew my contributions had made a big difference. But then I reminded myself why I'd left in the first place. My mom had treated me like I was disposable, so why should I feel bad for putting myself first? The next week, the guilt trips turned into anger. My mom sent long, rambling texts about how I was ruining everything. One text read, "You've embarrassed me. Everyone in the family is asking why you left, and I don't know what to tell them." I didn't bother replying. I knew whatever I said would just fuel the fire. Instead, I focused on settling into my new place. I caught up on work, got my studio fully functional again, and started feeling like myself. It was amazing how much better I felt without all the chaos and negativity weighing me down. A few days later, my sister called me out of the blue. I hadn't heard much from her since I moved out, so I figured she wanted to check in. But as soon as I picked up, I realized she had a different agenda. "Mom's really upset," she said, skipping the small talk. "She says you're not paying rent this month, and now she's freaking out about the bills." "I'm not living there anymore," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Why should I pay rent for a place I'm not living in?" "But you know she can't afford it without you," my sister argued. "You've always helped out. Why stop now?" "Because she didn't respect me," I said bluntly. "She gave away my room, locked me out of it, and treated me like I didn't matter. I'm done being taken advantage of." My sister sighed. "It's not that simple. Kelly's going through a lot, and Mom's just trying to help." "I get that," I said. "But why does helping Kelly mean screwing me over? I was paying rent for that room. I had every right to keep it." "She didn't mean to screw you over," my sister said weakly. "She's just stressed." "So am I shot back. But no one cared about that when I was being pushed out of my own room." She didn't have much to say after that. We talked for a few more minutes, mostly about her school stuff, and then hung up. I could tell she was stuck in the middle, but I wasn't going to let her guilt me into changing my mind. As the days went on, the texts from my mom started tapering off. I think she realized I wasn't going to budge. But then she pulled one last stunt that made me glad I'd left. One morning, I woke up to a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. It said, "Hey, I heard about the drama with your mom. Are you okay?" Confused, I asked what they were talking about. That's when they sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post my mom had made. In it, she painted me as the villain, claiming I'd abandoned her and the family during their time of need. She left out the part where she gave my room away, of course, and made it sound like I'd left out of sheer spite. I was furious. It was one thing to argue with me privately, but airing our dirty laundry online? That was too far. I didn't respond to the post, though. I figured it wasn't worth the effort. Let her play the victim if that's what she needed to do. I knew the truth, and so did the people who actually mattered. Now, a month later, I'm fully settled into my new place. My work is back on track, my stress levels are way down, and I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. My mom still texts me occasionally, but I keep the conversations short and stick to neutral topics. I've learned to set boundaries, and I'm not letting her guilt trip me anymore. Do I feel bad about leaving? Sometimes, yeah. It sucks that things had to end this way, but I don't regret my decision. I deserve respect, and if my mom couldn't give me that, then I had to find it elsewhere. Moving out was the best thing I could have done for myself, and I'm not looking back. Was I the a-hole for leaving and refusing to pay rent for the rest of the month? I don't think so. I tried to be reasonable, but my mom made it clear that I didn't matter as much as Kelly and her kids. At the end of the day, I had to put myself first. If that makes me selfish, so be it. Story 5. This story is titled, "My Girlfriend Wanted an Open Relationship, so I slept with her best friend. Now she's losing it." Hey Reddit, never thought I'd be posting here about relationship stuff, but I really need to get this off my chest and maybe get some advice. I'm 28 male, and up until recently, I thought I had a pretty solid relationship with my girlfriend Sophie, 27 female. We've been together for 3 years, living together for 2, and honestly, everything was going great. Like, I was secretly checking out engagement rings on my lunch breaks. Kind of great. We met through mutual friends at a board game night. Super normal story. She laughed at my dumb jokes. I liked how she was super competitive at Monopoly, and we just clicked. Started dating pretty much right away. Got an apartment together after a year because it made sense. We were always at each other's places anyway. We had our routines, you know? Sunday morning pancakes, walking in the park after work, watching those terrible reality shows she loves while I play games on my phone. Normal couple stuff. Sophie works in marketing. I'm a project manager in construction. We both have decent jobs, good friends, and our families get along great. My mom loves her. Her dad always invites me to watch football. We were that couple that other people said gave them hope about relationships. Yeah, I know how that sounds now. Everything was perfectly normal until last Tuesday. We were having dinner, Sophie was telling me about some work project, and I was halfway through my sandwich when she just goes, "Hey, what would you think about trying an open relationship?" I literally stopped mid-bite, like fork halfway to my mouth, just frozen there. I thought maybe I heard her wrong, but nope. She kept talking about how she'd been reading about it online, how lots of couples were trying it these days, how it could help us grow individually and make our relationship stronger. Is there someone specific you want to date? I asked, because honestly, that was my first thought. Who brings up open relationships unless they've got someone in mind, right? Sophie got all defensive. No, it's not about anyone else. I just think it would be good for us to explore ourselves more. We're still young, and I don't want us to wake up in 10 years wondering what we missed out on. I sat there trying to process what was happening. This is the same girl who once got mad because a waitress smiled at me too much. Now she's talking about dating other people like she's suggesting we try a new restaurant. Have you been feeling unhappy? I asked, because maybe I'd missed something. Maybe there were signs I should have seen. Not at all, she said, reaching across the table to grab my hand. I love you. I love us. This isn't about being unhappy. It's about making our relationship even better. Think about it. We could both have new experiences, but still come home to each other. Lots of couples say it makes their connection stronger. I didn't know what to say. My brain stalled somewhere between confusion and panic, my appetite completely gone. The food in front of me might as well have been cardboard. Sophie, on the other hand, was animated, practically glowing as she talked, going on about boundaries, rules, communication. But all I could think was, where is this coming from? And yet, yeah, I know this makes me sound like a complete pushover. I said, okay, not because I wanted to, not because I believed in it, but because the sheer eagerness in her eyes, the way she leaned in, practically pleading for me to be on board, made it clear she had already decided. Saying no felt like shutting a door that she had no intention of closing. Are you sure you're okay with this? She asked, all wide-eyed concern, like she was giving me a real choice. We don't have to if you're not comfortable. I looked at her, at how desperate she seemed for me to agree, and somewhere in the back of my mind I knew, this isn't really a choice. Whether I liked it or not, something was already shifting between us. And if I wanted to figure out what was really going on, I had to play along. No, it's fine, I said, forcing a nod. If you think it'll be good for us, we can try it. And just like that, I stepped into something I didn't believe in, knowing deep down I was already losing her. She got all excited, started talking about how we should set up dating app profiles together, how we should have a system for letting each other know when we have dates planned. All these details she seemed to have already thought about. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there wondering how long she'd been planning this. The rest of the night was weird. We watched TV like normal, but my mind was racing. Sophie was cuddled up next to me on the couch, acting like everything was perfectly fine, like she hadn't just suggested completely changing our relationship. I kept wanting to take it back, to tell her I wasn't actually okay with it, but I didn't know how. Every time I looked at her scrolling through her phone with this little smile on her face, I felt more and more like I'd just made a huge mistake. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. Sophie was out cold next to me, peaceful as could be, while I stared at the ceiling wondering what the hell I'd gotten myself into. Part of me wanted to wake her up and tell her no, that I didn't want to share her with anyone else. But another part of me was scared. Scared that if I said no, she'd do it anyway, or leave me for someone else. So I lay there, running through every conversation we'd had recently, trying to figure out if there were signs I missed. Was she bored? Was I not enough? Was there already someone else? The questions kept coming, and I had answers for none of them. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of how messed up things were about to get. Things started changing the very next day. Sophie spent the whole evening setting up her Tinder and Bumble profiles, asking me to help pick photos like this was some totally normal thing for a boyfriend to do. She even asked me to take new pictures of her. Yeah, seriously. I played along, taking photos of my girlfriend so she could look good for other guys. I tried setting up my own profile too, just to show I was making an effort, but my heart wasn't in it. Every time I tried writing a bio, it felt weird and fake. What was I supposed to write? In a relationship but looking for fun? The whole thing made me feel gross. I think that she knew that I wouldn't meet with anyone because I am not social, and I don't have time or energy to meet new people. And I told her about that a couple of times, so she thought she could go into dates and keep me as a backup plan. Sophie got matches right away. Obviously, she's gorgeous and fun. But what really got to me was how fast she started meeting these guys. Within a week, she had 3 dates lined up. 3. She'd show me their profiles like we were gossiping about celebrity crushes or something. "Look at this one," she'd say, shoving her phone in my face. "He's a personal trainer at that fancy gym downtown. We're getting coffee tomorrow." And I'd just nod and try to act like this was totally cool and normal. The first time she got ready for a date, I felt sick to my stomach. She wore this black dress I'd never seen before. Yeah, she bought new clothes for this, and spent like an hour doing her makeup. When she walked out of our bedroom, she did this little twirl. "How do I look?" she asked, all excited. "Great," I managed to say, while thinking about how that dress probably cost more than what she usually spends on our date nights. She came home late that night, all giggly and happy. I pretended to be asleep when she got in bed, but I heard her texting someone for like an hour. The next morning, she was humming while making coffee, acting like everything was perfect. I started paying attention to her schedule. Monday, it was coffee with the gym guy. Wednesday, dinner with some lawyer dude. Friday, drinks with a guy who owned a food truck. Yeah, the range was interesting. Each time, she'd come home looking like she'd had the time of her life. I started checking the locations she was tagging on Instagram. Not my proudest moment, but I needed to know what was really going on. One night, I actually drove by the restaurant where she said she was having dinner. Saw her sitting at the bar with some tall guy in a suit, laughing at whatever he was saying. She had her hand on his arm, looking at him the way she used to look at me. The worst part wasn't even seeing her with these guys. It was how she changed at home. She started spending way less time with me. No more cuddles. She was always texting someone. Our Sunday pancake tradition? Forgotten because she was meeting the girls for brunch. I tried talking to her about it once. "Don't you think you're going on a lot of dates?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She looked at me like I was being ridiculous. "That's the whole point of an open relationship, isn't it? To meet new people and have experiences? You should try it too. I can help you with your profile if you want." But I didn't want help with my profile. I wanted my girlfriend back. I wanted the person who used to get excited about ordering pizza and watching bad movies with me. Not this new version who was always dressed up and heading out the door. One night, she was getting ready for yet another date. Guy number 6 or 7. I'd lost count. And I just couldn't take it anymore. I went for a walk to clear my head and ended up at this park where we used to have picnics. Sat there for like 2 hours, thinking about how fast everything had fallen apart. My phone kept buzzing with messages from Sophie. "Hope you're okay. Don't wait up. Having such a great time." Each message felt like she was twisting the knife a little more. The next day, she tried to tell me about her date. Some story about how funny this guy was. How he took her to this amazing new restaurant. I just got up and left the room. She followed me, looking confused. "I thought you were okay with this," she said, sounding actually surprised. "You said you were fine with it." "Yeah, well, maybe I'm not," I finally said. "But you could be dating too. You're choosing to stay home and be miserable." That's when I realized she really didn't get it. She couldn't understand that I didn't want to date other people. I wanted her. The old her. The one who used to love our boring, normal life together. By this point, it had been 3 weeks since she started this whole open relationship thing. 3 weeks of watching her get dressed up for other guys. 3 weeks of lying awake wondering where she was, what she was doing, who she was with. 3 weeks of feeling like I was losing my mind. I honestly thought she'd snap out of it, to realize how ridiculous she sounded. I kept waiting for her to wake up and see how stupid this whole thing was, to understand what she was throwing away. But she didn't. No hesitation, no guilt. She was actually proud of it. She walked around like she unlocked some higher level of dating, like she'd figured out something the rest of us were too dumb to understand. And the worst part? I couldn't wrap my head around why. She seemed happy with me. So why burn it all down? Why act like what we had wasn't enough? That's when it finally clicked. There was no fixing this. No coming back. It was over in a way that couldn't be undone. And for the first time, I wasn't even sure I cared anymore. The thought of her out there, living it up without a care, while I was stuck here drowning in it, it lit something in me. I wanted to make her regret everything. Make her see exactly what she threw away. But that didn't mean I had a plan yet. I just knew I wasn't going to sit around suffering while she got to have all the fun. I hadn't figured out my next move yet. I just knew I needed to talk to someone. Someone who would actually understand how messed up this all was. And that's when Emma started coming around more often. Emma's been Sophie's best friend since their freshman year of college. She was always around our place. Movie nights, helping us move furniture, bringing soup when one of us was sick. Just one of those really genuine people, you know? She's a kindergarten teacher, which fits her perfectly because she's got this way of making everyone feel heard and important. I never thought of her as anything more than Sophie's friend. Sure, she's pretty. Long brown hair, green eyes, always smiling, but she was firmly in the friend zone in my mind. Plus, she dated this guy Mark for like 2 years, though they broke up a few months ago. The first time she came over after Sophie started this open relationship thing, it was to borrow some mixing bowls for a birthday cake she was making. Sophie was out, surprise, with some new guy, and Emma could tell something was off with me. "You look terrible," she said, in that direct way she has. "What's going on?" I didn't mean to tell her everything, but it just came out. How Sophie sprung the open relationship idea on me, how she'd been dating different guys almost every night, how I felt like I was going crazy watching it all happen. Emma sat there listening, actually listening, not just waiting for her turn to talk. When I finished, she shook her head. "That's not an open relationship," she said. "That's just Sophie doing whatever she wants without caring how it affects you." Something about hearing someone else say it made me feel less insane. Emma started coming by more often after that, usually when Sophie was out on her dates. We'd watch movies, order takeout, just hang out. It was nice having someone to talk to who knew both of us and could understand the situation. One night, about a month into Sophie's exploring, Emma came over looking kind of nervous. She was fidgeting with her necklace, which I knew was something she did when she was anxious. "I need to tell you something," she said, sitting on the other end of the couch. "And it might make things weird, but I can't keep pretending." My stomach did this weird flip thing. I think part of me knew what was coming. "I've had feelings for you for a long time," she said, looking at her hands. "Like, since before you and Sophie even got together. But you were with her, and she's my best friend, so I never said anything. I started dating Mark hoping it would help me get over it, but..." She shrugged. It didn't work. I sat there, trying to wrap my head around it. Emma, kind, hilarious, drop-dead gorgeous Emma, had feelings for me? How did I not see that? She was the one who helped me pick out gifts for Sophie. The same Sophie who was still figuring out if she even wanted something serious with me. Emma, who made me homemade chicken soup when I was sick, while Sophie barely texted to check in. Had I been blind this whole time? "You don't have to say anything," she added quickly. "I just needed you to know. Watching Sophie treat you like this, seeing how much it's hurting you, it's been killing me. You deserve better than this." I looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time. That simple green sweater somehow made her eyes glow, and her hair was up in one of those effortless, messy buns, the kind that shouldn't be attractive, but somehow made her look even better. And right then, I wondered how the hell I never noticed before. At the same time, Sophie's actions were still burning in the back of my mind. She really thought I'd sit around, waiting like some loyal idiot, while she paraded around with not just one guy, but multiple? Like I was some safety net, just there whenever she got bored? That was her biggest mistake. She was out there doing whatever she wanted, thinking I'd still be available when she decided to come back. Nah, for me, that chapter was closed. I wasn't playing by her terms anymore, I was playing by mine. I decided to shoot my shot. I took a breath, feeling that shift, that moment where I finally took control. "Emma," I started, my voice steadier than I expected. She moved closer on the couch. "I know this is complicated. I know I'm probably making everything worse by telling you this. But seeing you so unhappy these past few weeks, I just couldn't stay quiet anymore." Then she kissed me. Just leaned in and kissed me. I should have stopped it. I should have thought about Sophie, about our friendship, about how complicated this would make everything. Instead, I kissed her back. It wasn't just a kiss. We ended up spending the night together, and it was different. Emma noticed me, really was interested in me. She noticed when something in my expression changed, asked what I was thinking, actually cared about the answer. Afterward, lying there in the dark, I let it all sink in. How far this had gone, how everything had shifted. The realization that I'd just slept with my girlfriend's best friend, something that should have felt like crossing a line, but all I could think about was how right it felt. I thought this wasn't some meaningless rebound, some impulsive mistake. She turned to me, propping herself up on her elbow, her eyes searching mine. "What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice quiet but steady. I exhaled, staring up at the ceiling. I should have had an answer, should have felt guilt, conflict, something, but all I felt was relief, like I could finally breathe after weeks of suffocating in Sophie's mess. "I don't know," I admitted. Emma hesitated, then said, "I don't regret it. Do you?" The crazy thing? I didn't. Not even for a second. Because for the first time since this whole open relationship disaster began, I saw things clearly. I wasn't the one who ruined us. I wasn't the one who broke trust. And maybe, just maybe, I deserved someone who actually wanted me. Just me. Sophie's going to lose it when she finds out, I said. Probably, Emma agreed. But isn't it funny how she thinks it's perfectly fine for her to date other people, but the idea of you doing the same would drive her crazy? She had a point. And that's when I decided maybe it was time for Sophie to get a taste of her own medicine. I didn't tell Sophie about Emma right away. Part of me wanted to see how she'd react to little hints first. Yeah, maybe that was petty, but after watching her parade around with different guys for weeks, I figured she deserved to feel what that was like. The morning after Emma left, Sophie came home from staying at Jessica's place. Pretty sure Jessica was actually some guy named Jason, but whatever. She was all chatty, telling me about her girls' night while making coffee. That's when I dropped the first hint. Oh, Emma stopped by last night, I said, super casual. We had a really good talk. Sophie's hand froze on the coffee pot. Emma was here? Yeah, we hung out for a while. She's really easy to talk to, you know? Sophie put her coffee mug down too hard, splashing some on the counter. What did you guys talk about? Just stuff, I said, shrugging. Life, relationships, feelings. It was nice. The look on her face was priceless. She spent the next hour texting someone, probably trying to get details from Emma, while pretending to watch TV with me. I could see her glancing at me every few minutes, trying to figure out what happened. Over the next few days, I started mentioning Emma more and more. How funny she was. How she really understood me. How we'd been texting. Each time, Sophie would get this tight look on her face, like she was trying not to react but couldn't help it. One morning, I was smiling at my phone while texting Emma, and Sophie practically jumped across the couch to see what I was looking at. Who are you texting? She asked, trying to sound casual and failing completely. Just Emma, I said. She's really into this new show I recommended. Sophie's face did this weird thing where she tried to smile but looked like she was in pain instead. You guys have been talking a lot lately. Yeah, she's great to talk to. Really gets me, you know? Sophie started doing this thing where she'd check my phone when I left it lying around. She thought she was being sneaky about it, but I'd catch her scrolling through my messages when she thought I was in the bathroom or kitchen. The funny thing? I deleted any real evidence of what happened with Emma. I just left enough normal friendly text to make her suspicious and drive her crazy. Then, Sophie started showing up at places where she knew I'd be. Like, I'd mentioned going to grab coffee at this place near work, and suddenly she'd just happened to be there. Or I'd say I was meeting friends at a bar, and she'd show up an hour later saying she was in the neighborhood. The best part? She started canceling her own dates. Suddenly, she was home more often, wanting to watch movies or cook dinner together. It was like watching someone try to mark their territory without admitting that's what they were doing. After countless attempts to get closer, each one met with me shutting it down. She finally came right out with it. Are you seeing someone else? Isn't that kind of the point of an open relationship? I replied. To see other people? Yeah, but who is it? Is it Emma? Are you sleeping with Emma? I just smiled and said, I thought we weren't supposed to share details about our other partners. Isn't that what you said when I asked about your dates? Sophie lost it. Started going through my Instagram followers, checking who liked my posts, analyzing every interaction I had online. She even started following Emma's social media obsessively, reading into every post or story Emma shared. The final blow came when Emma posted a selfie in a coffee shop, the same coffee shop where I get my morning coffee. Sophie called me immediately. Are you with Emma right now? Sophie, I'm at work. But you always get coffee at that place in the morning? Did you meet her there? I let her panic for a minute before saying, that coffee shop has like 1,000 customers every day. People can go to the same coffee shop without it meaning anything. But Sophie wasn't buying it. She started asking me where I was going all the time, who I was seeing, what I was doing. The same woman who'd been coming home late from dates for weeks, who never gave me straight answers about who she was with, was suddenly demanding to know my every move. Emma thought it was hilarious when I told her about Sophie's behavior. We'd been meeting up secretly, usually at her place where Sophie wouldn't accidentally spot us. The small doubt I'd initially felt about hooking up with her was fading fast, replaced by something that felt a lot like justice. She really can't handle not being in control, can she? Emma said one night, while we were cuddled up on her couch. Nope, I agreed. And the best part? She can't even complain about it without admitting she never actually wanted an open relationship. She just wanted permission to cheat. That's when Sophie decided to change tactics. She came home one night and dropped a bomb that would change everything. I think we should close the relationship again. I stared at Sophie as she sat there on our couch, looking all serious and concerned, telling me how she thought we should focus on us again. The same person who'd been going on dates left and right for weeks was now sitting there acting like she was doing me some huge favor. I just think we've explored enough, she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. We could go back to how things were before. Just you and me. I couldn't help but laugh. Just you and me? Like the past few weeks never happened? Well, yeah, she said, looking confused by my reaction. Isn't that what you wanted? You haven't seemed happy with the open relationship? That's when I decided it was time to stop playing games. You're right. I haven't been happy watching my girlfriend go on dates with a new guy every other night while barely acknowledging my existence. Her face did this weird thing where she tried to look sympathetic, but couldn't quite pull it off. I know it was hard for you, but that's why I'm saying we should close things up again. We can work on us. Work on us? I repeated. Like how you've been working on getting to know half the guys in this city? That's not fair, she said, getting defensive. You agreed to the open relationship. You could have been dating too. Oh, I have been, I said, watching her face carefully. I've been seeing someone. Sophie went pale. Like, actually pale. What? Who? Does it matter? Isn't that what you wanted? Both of us exploring and having new experiences? She jumped up from the couch. Of course it matters. Who the hell is it? How long? Is it Emma? It's Emma, isn't it? I just sat there, letting her spiral. She started pacing around our living room, running her hands through her hair. It is Emma, isn't it? That's why you've been talking about her so much. That's why she's been avoiding my calls. My best friend? Really? Funny how you're allowed to sleep with whoever you want. But the moment I do the same, it's a problem. But it's Emma, she screamed. She's my best friend. You can't sleep with my best friend. Actually, I said, standing up, I can. And I did. Sophie stopped pacing. She stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. What did you just say? I slept with Emma. Multiple times, actually. And you know what? It was great. She actually cares about my feelings, which is more than I can say for you lately. Sophie's face went from shock to rage in about 2 seconds. You're lying. Emma would never do that to me. Really? Because she did. Want to know what else? She's had feelings for me for years. Even when she was dating Mark, she was thinking about me. You're making this up to hurt me, Sophie said, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. I'm not. Remember last Thursday when you were out with that startup guy? Emma came over. We talked for hours, then we slept together. She sees me as a person, not just some backup plan waiting at home while you live your best life. Sophie grabbed her phone, probably to call Emma. I don't believe you. Emma would never. Check your texts with her, I said. Notice how she's been kind of distant lately? Not really responding to your messages? That's why. She scrolled through her phone frantically, probably seeing all the unanswered messages and short replies from Emma in a new light. This can't be happening, she muttered. This isn't how this was supposed to go. Oh, really? How was it supposed to go? You get to have fun with other guys while I sit at home being the loyal boyfriend? Did you really think I wouldn't eventually meet someone else? But not Emma, she yelled. Anyone but Emma. You knew this would hurt me. I lost it at that point. Hurt you? What about how much you've been hurting me? Watching you get dressed up for other guys, coming home late smelling like someone else's cologne, barely even looking at me anymore. Did you ever think about how that felt? That was different, she tried to argue. Those guys didn't mean anything. So that makes it better? The fact that you were just having meaningless hookups while I actually developed real feelings for someone? I intended to throw some hints here and there to let her feel the burn that she made me feel. She stopped, staring at me. Real feelings? Yeah, real feelings. Emma and I, it's not just physical. We talk, we laugh, we actually care about each other. When was the last time you and I had a real conversation that wasn't about your dates or your new experiences? Sophie sat back down on the couch, looking defeated. So what are you saying? You want to be with Emma now? I'm saying this open relationship thing showed me what I really want. And it's not someone who treats me like an afterthought. She started crying then. Big dramatic sobs that probably would have worked on me a month ago. But all I could think about was how she hadn't shed a single tear over how much she'd been hurting me. We can fix this, she said between sobs. We can go back to how things were. I shook my head. No, we can't. Because now I know what it feels like to be with someone who actually values me. And I'm not settling for less than that anymore. That's when Sophie did something I never expected. She grabbed her keys and stormed out, saying she was going to Emma's place to sort this out once and for all. The moment Sophie slammed the door, I grabbed my phone to warn Emma. When I told her Sophie was heading her way, she just said, "Let her come." Emma's always been the calm one. Like nothing seems to shake her. Still, I offered to come over for support. No, Emma said. I need to handle this myself. She's been my best friend for 10 years. I owe her that much. I spent the next hour pacing around our apartment, checking my phone every 2 minutes. The place felt weird, like when you know a storm is coming and the air gets all heavy. Finally, Emma called. Her voice was shaky. She showed up screaming, Emma said. Like, my neighbors probably heard everything. She kept yelling about how I betrayed her, how I'm a terrible friend, how I'd been plotting this all along. What did you say? I told her the truth, that I've had feelings for you for years, but never acted on them because she was my friend. That watching her treat you like garbage these past weeks made me realize she never deserved either of us. That what happened between us wasn't planned, but I don't regret it. Apparently, Sophie didn't take that well. She tried to push past Emma into her apartment, saying she needed to see for herself if I was there. When Emma blocked the door, Sophie accused her of hiding me. She's completely lost it, Emma said. She started listing all these random times we hung out, trying to prove we'd been sneaking around behind her back for months. Even brought up that time last year when you helped me move my couch. You know, when she was too busy with work to help? Sophie had apparently convinced herself that every interaction Emma and I ever had was some secret sign of an affair. The time Emma brought me soup when I had the flu? Obviously a cover for hooking up. The group movie nights at our place? Just an excuse to make eyes at each other. Then she started crying, Emma continued, like sliding down my doorframe crying, saying she never meant for any of this to happen. My neighbor came out to check if everything was okay. It was mortifying. Sophie finally left after Mrs. Chen threatened to call the police about the noise, but not before telling Emma that she'd ruined everything and that she'd never forgive her. About 20 minutes after my call with Emma ended, Sophie came back to our place. She looked terrible. She walked in, saw me on the phone, I was texting Emma updates, and just lost it. Are you texting her right now? Planning your next meetup? How long have you two been laughing at me behind my back? Nobody's laughing at you, Sophie. You did this to yourself. I didn't do anything, she screamed, throwing her purse across the room. I suggested an open relationship to make us stronger. I didn't tell you to go sleep with my best friend. No, you just wanted permission to sleep with whoever you wanted while keeping me as your backup plan. She started grabbing things, pictures of us, gifts I'd given her, and throwing them in a box. I'm going to stay at Jessica's, my real friend, someone who wouldn't stab me in the back. Fine by me, I said. Take whatever you want. That made her pause. That's it? You're not even going to try to stop me? Why would I? You've made it pretty clear what matters to you, and it's not me or this relationship. She stopped packing and sat on the couch, suddenly looking really small. I thought you'd always be there. That no matter who else I dated, you'd be waiting when I was ready to settle down. And there it was. The truth finally coming out. I wasn't her partner. I was her safety net, her backup plan, her guaranteed happy ending while she went out and explored. Well, you thought wrong, I told her. I'm not some puppy waiting faithfully by the door while you're out having fun. I'm a person with feelings, and I deserve better than being your second choice. But you weren't my second choice. I love you. No, Sophie. You love having me around when it's convenient. There's a difference. She started crying again, but this time I didn't feel anything. No urge to comfort her, no guilt, nothing. Just emptiness. I'll come get the rest of my stuff tomorrow, she said finally, picking up her box. I can't be here right now. After she left, I called Emma. Just hearing her voice made me feel calmer. We talked for hours that night. About Sophie. About us. About what happens next. Emma mentioned that some of their mutual friends were already taking sides, with most of them calling her a backstabber without even knowing the whole story. I don't care, she said. They can think what they want. I know what's real. I looked around my half-empty apartment, at the spaces where Sophie's things used to be, and realized I felt relieved, like I could finally breathe again. I told Emma to come over to settle with me, and she agreed. I didn't care anymore about anything. The next morning, Sophie came to get her stuff. She brought Jessica and 2 other friends I didn't know well. They gave me these nasty looks while helping her pack, like I was the bad guy in all this. Sophie had obviously told them her version of events. Your Xbox is mine. I bought it for your birthday, she said, unplugging it. Fine, take it. I was beyond caring about stuff like that. Emma showed up halfway through the packing session. She hadn't planned to come, but I texted her saying I needed coffee, and she read between the lines. Sophie's friends started whispering when Emma walked in, but Emma just ignored them and handed me my coffee. Really? You're just going to flaunt this in my face? Sophie snapped. Nobody's flaunting anything, Emma said calmly. I'm just here to support my boyfriend. First time either of us had used that word. Sophie looked like she'd been slapped. The packing went faster after that. Sophie's friends kept rushing around, grabbing things, probably trying to get her out of there before she had another meltdown. When they finished, Sophie stood in the doorway for a minute. "I really loved you," she said softly. "No," I replied. "You loved having me available whenever you wanted me. There's a difference." After they left, Emma helped me clean up. "You okay?" Emma asked, watching me toss Sophie's things in a donation box. "Yeah, for the first time in months, I really am. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, life's been different. Better. Emma and I are taking things slow, doing it right. We got coffee at her favorite spot last weekend and ran into some of Sophie's friends. They ignored us completely. Emma just squeezed my hand and smiled. Sophie's still telling people her side of the story. How I cheated, how Emma betrayed her, how we secretly wanted each other the whole time. Some people believe her. The ones who matter don't. Yesterday, Emma brought over a bunch of her kindergarten students' artwork to decorate my fridge. "Too empty," she said. Looking at those crayon drawings, I realized something. This is what I want. Someone who notices the little things, who cares about making my space feel warmer, who shows up with coffee just because. I didn't reply to her text. Instead, I helped Emma grade papers for her class while we watched that new mystery show she loves. Simple, normal, real. Looking back, I'm almost grateful Sophie suggested that open relationship. Not because it was a good idea, it wasn't, but because it showed me what I really wanted in a partner. Someone who chooses me first, not just when it's convenient. That's the thing about life. Sometimes the worst decisions lead you to the best places. Or in my case, to the right person who was there all along. Edit. Thanks for all the support, Reddit. Emma's reading this over my shoulder right now, laughing at how I described her, always smiling. She says hi, by the way. Story 6. Gold digger marries my dad 2 years before his death, and now she expects to take over his estate, but she has no clue who really owns it. All right, so here's the deal. My dad's going into hospice next week, and it's been a mess for a while now. I mean, we all knew it was coming, but it doesn't make it any easier, right? Thing is, the house he's living in with his wife Sandy and her 2 daughters, Tina and Beth, isn't even his house. It's mine. I bought it years ago, but you wouldn't know that by the way they've been acting. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind a bit. About 7 years ago, things got rough for my dad after my mom passed away. They'd been together for over 30 years, and when she died, it wrecked him. I mean, it was hard for all of us. But my dad, he fell apart. He lost his job a few months later, couldn't keep up with the rent on their apartment, and got evicted. It was like everything just crumbled at once, and he didn't have anyone else to turn to. I was all he had. So being the only kid in a position to help, I bought him a house. Nothing crazy, just a small place in a quiet older neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. And more importantly, it gave him a roof over his head when he really needed it. He had his dog Charlie too, and honestly, Charlie was like his last connection to my mom. That dog was family to us, you know? It made the whole situation a little easier for him. For the first few years, things were good. Dad was healing, slowly, and the house became his little sanctuary. He got back on his feet as much as anyone could after something like that, and Charlie was always there by his side, keeping him company. I'd visit every weekend, and it became our routine. Charlie would wag his tail like crazy whenever I showed up, and we'd hang out in the backyard, grilling burgers, catching up, just trying to enjoy life again after everything that had happened. Then Sandy came into the picture. They met through some mutual friends, and before I knew it, they were married. I wasn't against it or anything. I mean, I was happy for my dad if this was what he needed. And Sandy seemed all right at first, you know? She was polite, always had a smile, and she seemed like she genuinely cared about my dad. So, when he said she was moving in, I didn't have a problem with it. It's his life after all, even if it's technically my house. As long as he was happy, that's all that mattered. But here's where things started getting a little weird. First, it was just Sandy moving in. Fine. Then, out of nowhere, her daughter Tina shows up with all her stuff. Like she's moving in too. Now, Tina's in her late 20s, a grown adult. So it's not like she's some kid who needs a place to crash for a weekend. No, she's there to stay. I didn't say anything because, again, it's my dad's life and I wanted to respect that. But still, it was a little strange, right? A few months go by and I start noticing things every time I visit. There's more of Sandy's stuff everywhere. The house, which used to feel like my dad's place, now felt like it was more hers. Whatever, I told myself. Dad's happy, let it be. But then, just when I thought it couldn't get more crowded, Beth, the younger daughter, moves in. Now it's a full house. Sandy, Tina, Beth, and my dad, all under one roof. And you can imagine how that went. At first, I tried to let it go. I mean, yeah, It was weird seeing my dad's home being slowly taken over by Sandy and her daughters, but what could I do? I'm not going to tell my dad how to live his life. But things started getting worse. The vibe in the house shifted. Suddenly, my dad's opinion didn't seem to matter much anymore. Everything was about what Sandy and her daughters wanted. Things were already going downhill with Sandy and her daughters slowly taking over my dad's house. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get more annoying, we had the whole mess with Charlie. Let me explain something about Charlie. This dog wasn't just a pet. Charlie was family. My mom loved that dog like he was her baby, and after she passed away, Charlie became my dad's emotional support. It was like Charlie was the one thing keeping him grounded after everything that happened. I know some people don't get that, but if you've ever had a dog, you know what I mean. So, you can imagine how much it pissed me off when Beth, Sandy's youngest daughter, started complaining about Charlie. Like, really? Charlie was old, harmless, and spent 90% of his day either sleeping or chasing his own tail when he wasn't too tired. But one day, out of the blue, Beth comes up with this whole thing about how Charlie makes her uncomfortable. She said she didn't feel safe with him around. Now, I'm not one to dismiss people's fears, but come on. This was Charlie, not some rabid wolf. The guy was 12 years old, could barely make it up the stairs without needing a break, and was about as dangerous as a pillow. I didn't take it seriously at first. Thought maybe she was just being dramatic. But Sandy, of course, jumped in to back her up, making a whole big deal out of it. She started saying that maybe it was time for Charlie to find a new home, like he was some unwanted furniture that needed to be thrown out. That was my breaking point. I could see the stress it was putting on my dad. He wasn't just being asked to give up a dog. He was being asked to give up the last real connection he had to my mom. It broke my heart to see it. But what could I do? I wasn't living there, and Sandy had pretty much taken over the decision-making in the house. I could tell my dad didn't want to get rid of Charlie, but he was tired. He was dealing with his own health issues, and I guess he didn't have the energy to fight back anymore. So, yeah, I stepped in. I told my dad straight up that Charlie could come live with me. I wasn't going to let Sandy or her daughters bully him into giving up that dog. My dad was relieved, but I could tell it still hurt him. I mean, he didn't want to give up Charlie, but he knew it was the only way to stop the constant arguing in the house. Sandy acted like she was doing him some huge favor by letting me take Charlie in, but I knew better. It wasn't about Charlie. It was about control. She and her daughters wanted to be the ones calling all the shots, and Charlie was just another way to push my dad out of the decision-making process in his own home. From that day on, I started bringing Charlie with me every time I visited, and every single time, it was like I was bringing some kind of dangerous animal into the house. Tina and Beth would literally act like Charlie was going to maul them any second. The first time I showed up with him after taking him home, Beth actually screamed when she saw him, like she hadn't lived with this dog for the past few years. Sandy tried to play it off, but you could see her rolling her eyes every time I walked in the door with Charlie trotting behind me. It was ridiculous. Charlie would come in, wagging his little tail, barely noticing them, and all they could do was complain about how scary he was. I'd sit with my dad in the backyard, just like we always did, while Charlie lay there in the grass, not bothering anyone. And yet, every time Beth or Tina would peek out the window, give us this disgusted look, and run off like they were avoiding some kind of attack dog. Honestly, I think they just hated that Charlie was still around because it was a reminder that this was my dad's house, not theirs. Charlie was part of my dad's life, part of my mom's life. And no matter how much they tried to take over, Charlie was a constant reminder that they hadn't completely pushed my dad out yet. But then, one day, Sandy finally said what I knew had been coming. She asked me not to bring Charlie around anymore. I was fuming. Why? I asked. Charlie's not doing anything. He just sits there. She tried to sugarcoat it, saying how Beth still felt uncomfortable and how it was just better if Charlie didn't come over anymore. I could see right through it. This wasn't about Charlie at all. This was about power. She and her daughters had been slowly chipping away at everything that was important to my dad, and now they wanted to get rid of the last thing that connected him to his old life. I was livid, but I didn't want to make things harder for my dad. He was already sick, and the last thing I wanted was to stress him out more. So, I told Sandy straight to her face, Charlie stays. He's not hurting anyone, and if you don't like it, then don't come outside when I visit. She didn't like that, not one bit. But I wasn't backing down. I could tell she wanted to push harder, but I wasn't giving her the chance. From then on, every time I visited, Charlie came with me, and I didn't care what they thought. My dad deserved that much, at least. The tension in the house got worse after that. It was like Sandy and her daughters were just waiting for my dad to be out of the picture so they could fully take over. I could see it in the way they treated him, like he was just some old man taking up space. But as long as Charlie and I were around, They couldn't quite get rid of him entirely. And now, with my dad going into hospice, I can already see the writing on the wall. They think they're going to get the house, that everything's going to belong to them once he's gone. But they're in for a surprise. This is still my house, and Charlie, he's going to outlast all of them. So with my dad going into hospice soon, I knew time was running out to say goodbye properly. It was something I dreaded, but I couldn't put it off anymore. He wasn't doing well, and I needed to see him, especially since I'd been taking care of Charlie ever since Sandy and her daughters basically forced him out. I wanted to bring Charlie to see my dad one last time, let them have their moment before everything went downhill. When I showed up at the house, Sandy, Tina, and Beth were already there. The second I walked in with Charlie by my side, I could feel the tension in the room. You know when you walk into a place and everyone just stops what they're doing? Yeah, it was like that. The vibe was off, but I didn't care. I was there for my dad, not for them. Tina was the first to say something. She looked at Charlie, wrinkled her nose, and said, "Oh great, he brought that stupid dog again." She wasn't even trying to hide the attitude. She acted like Charlie was some kind of wild animal, but the truth is, Charlie was so old at this point, he barely moved unless you coaxed him with a treat or something. But there she was, acting all dramatic, like the dog was going to destroy the house. I took a deep breath and ignored her. I wasn't about to start a fight right then, even though I could feel my blood boiling. I just said, "I'm here to see Dad," and headed straight for his room. I could hear Sandy say something to Beth under her breath as I passed, but I didn't catch all of it. Probably some passive-aggressive comment about me or the dog, but whatever. I didn't have the energy to deal with them. When I got to my dad's room, he was lying in bed, looking frail but still awake. His face lit up when he saw me, and when Charlie trotted in behind me, wagging his tail like crazy, my dad smiled for the first time in weeks. It hit me right then how much my dad had missed Charlie. Charlie immediately jumped up on the bed, which honestly was a struggle for him with how old he was, but he made it. He curled up next to my dad, like they hadn't missed a beat. My dad reached over and scratched behind Charlie's ears, just like he used to. For a few minutes, it was like things were normal again, and I could see how much peace it brought my dad to have Charlie there. We didn't talk much at first. It was one of those moments where words aren't really needed, you know? I just sat there with him, Charlie laying between us, and we stayed like that for a bit. I could tell my dad was weaker than the last time I'd seen him, and it hurt to see him like that, but there was also a kind of relief. At least for those few minutes, he looked happy again. After a while, my dad spoke up. "I've missed this old guy," he said, his voice a little shaky but still carrying that familiar warmth. "It's good to see him again." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without choking up. I didn't want to show how emotional I was getting, so I just reached over and patted Charlie on the head. We talked for a bit, about simple things. Memories, stories about Charlie, old family moments from when Mom was still around. It felt good, but it was also bittersweet. The whole time I kept thinking about how this might be the last time I'd ever see my dad like this, awake and aware. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around, even when you know it's coming. And then, of course, Sandy had to ruin it. I was getting ready to leave when she walked in, not even bothering to knock. She glanced at Charlie curled up on the bed next to my dad and immediately looked annoyed. "I thought I asked you not to bring that dog here," she said, crossing her arms and glaring at me like I'd committed some huge crime. I felt the anger bubbling up again, but I stayed calm. "Charlie isn't hurting anyone," I said, keeping my voice steady. "He's here to say goodbye to Dad. You've got a problem with that?" Beth, who had followed her mom into the room, piped up from behind her. "Good riddance," she muttered, loud enough for me to hear. "I'm glad we won't have to deal with him after this." That was it. I'd had enough. I stood up, trying to keep my cool, but it wasn't easy. "You know what? I don't care what you think about Charlie. He's family, and he's staying here as long as I'm here. If you don't like it, tough." Sandy looked like she wanted to argue, but my dad cut her off. "It's fine," he said quietly. "Let them be." His voice was soft but firm, and Sandy didn't push it any further. I stayed a little while longer after that, mostly to make sure my dad and Charlie had enough time together. But eventually I had to leave. I knew it was probably the last time I'd bring Charlie over, and I wanted it to end on a good note. As I was walking out, Tina was sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone, and she barely looked up when I passed. But just as I was about to reach the door, she said, "I can't wait until we never have to see that dog again." I stopped in my tracks, turned around, and just stared at her for a second, trying to decide if I was really going to engage. But then I just said, "You won't have to," and walked out. I didn't need to give them any more of my time. On the drive home, I kept thinking about how wrong this all felt. It wasn't just about Charlie. It was about everything. How my dad's house had become something else entirely. How Sandy and her daughters had taken over. How they didn't even seem to care about my dad's condition. It was like they were just waiting for him to die so they could get on with their lives. But the joke's on them. This house isn't theirs, and when the time comes, they're going to find that out the hard way. Update 1. After that last visit with my dad, I knew something had to change. I couldn't keep tiptoeing around Sandy and her daughters, letting them act like they owned the place while I just stood by. My dad wasn't getting any better, and it was only a matter of time before he was gone. Once that happened, I knew Sandy and her daughters would expect to stay in the house indefinitely, just living there rent-free like they'd been doing for years. I wasn't going to let that happen. But instead of dropping the big bomb on them about the house being mine, I decided to take it step by step. First, I needed to see how they'd react to the idea of paying rent. Maybe, just maybe, they'd show some sign of responsibility and agree to it. But I wasn't holding my breath. So a few days after that emotional visit with my dad, I went back to the house. I walked in, and as usual, Sandy, Tina, and Beth were all hanging out in the living room like they didn't have a care in the world. They were watching some reality show on TV, laughing at something, and it honestly made me mad. My dad was in hospice, and here they were, acting like everything was fine. I took a deep breath and walked into the room. Tina glanced up at me, barely acknowledging that I was there, while Sandy paused the TV, clearly annoyed that I was interrupting their precious showtime. "Can we talk for a minute?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. I didn't want to start this off on the wrong foot, even though I was already feeling frustrated. Sandy raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "About what's going to happen after my dad passes," I said. I could feel the tension in the room rise instantly. The smiles and laughter disappeared, and suddenly, all eyes were on me. Good. They needed to hear this. "I've been thinking about it, and we need to talk about the house," I continued. "Specifically, about rent." The word rent hung in the air like a grenade waiting to explode. Beth let out an incredulous laugh. "Rent? What are you talking about?" I didn't let her get to me. "Once Dad passes, things are going to change. If you want to keep living here, you're going to have to start paying rent. I've already talked to a lawyer, and we've worked out a fair amount based on the market value of the house." Beth looked at me like I just insulted her entire existence. Tina sat up straight, ready to jump in with some snarky comment, but Sandy beat her to it. "Wait a minute," Sandy said, narrowing her eyes. "Why would we need to pay rent? James wanted us to stay here." I nodded, keeping my voice even. "I get that, but I've been covering the costs of this house for years, and that can't continue after he's gone. You've had a good deal here for a long time, but things are going to have to change. Either you start paying rent, or you'll need to find somewhere else to live." The room went dead quiet. I could see the wheels turning in Sandy's head as she tried to process what I was saying. Tina and Beth looked completely blindsided, like the idea of paying rent had never crossed their minds. Of course it hadn't. Why would it, when they'd been living there for free all this time? Finally, Sandy spoke up, her voice sharp. "This is James's house. He wanted us to stay here. You're not going to charge us rent after everything we've done for him." I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my cool. "Look, I'm not trying to make this difficult, but the reality is someone has to take care of the expenses, and it's not going to be me anymore. I've already covered everything up until now, but I can't keep doing that after Dad's gone. You either pay rent or you move out. Those are your options." Tina finally jumped in, her face red with anger. "You're unbelievable! We've been living here for years, and now you're trying to make money off us? What kind of person does that to family?" I sighed, feeling the frustration building. "I'm not trying to make money off anyone. I'm trying to make sure things are handled fairly. I've given you plenty of time, and I'm giving you more time now. 3 months after Dad passes, 3 months to figure out what you're going to do. That's more than fair." Beth crossed her arms, glaring at me. "So what? You're just going to throw us out if we don't pay?" "I don't want it to come to that," I said, meeting her glare. "But yeah, if you're not willing to pay rent, then you'll have to leave. I can't keep covering the costs for you." Sandy stood up then, trying to play the victim card. "I can't believe you do this to us after everything we've done for James. Everything we've done for this family. You're just going to kick us out like we're nothing?" I shook my head. "I'm not kicking you out. I'm giving you options. But like I said, things are going to change, and you need to be ready for that. I'm giving you 3 months to figure it out. That's more than generous." I could see Tina getting ready to say something else, but I was done with the conversation. I'd said what I needed to say, and I wasn't going to stand there and argue with them all day. So before they could pile on more complaints or guilt trips, I turned and headed for the door. As I left the house, I could still hear them talking, probably trying to figure out how to get around this, how to keep living there for free. But I wasn't going to budge. I'd given them their choices, pay rent or move out, and in 3 months they were going to have to face reality. They just didn't know yet that the house wasn't even my dad's to give them. Update 2. It happened faster than I thought. One day my dad was still hanging on, and the next, he was gone. Even though I knew it was coming, it still hit me like a ton of bricks. Watching him slip away like that wasn't easy, but at least I knew he was at peace now. It was over for him, and the pain he had been living with for so long was finally gone. But after the funeral, I had to deal with the aftermath. And no surprise, Sandy and her daughters, Tina and Beth, were acting like nothing had changed. It was almost as if they'd been waiting for this moment, expecting everything to fall into place for them. Like they were ready to take over now that my dad wasn't around. But they had no idea what was coming. I gave it a few days after the funeral to let things settle down, but I wasn't going to wait too long. The sooner I dealt with this, the better. They were probably expecting to stay in that house forever, free of charge, but I had other plans. So, I went over to the house. When I got there, Sandy was in the living room with Tina and Beth, sitting around like they owned the place. They were laughing about something on the TV, totally ignoring the fact that my dad had just passed. There was no grief, no sadness, just them living their lives like nothing had happened. I stood in the doorway for a second, just watching them. It was surreal, honestly. How could they be so unaffected by everything? I mean, my dad had just died, and here they were, acting like it was just another day. Finally, I cleared my throat and walked in. Sandy turned to look at me, but didn't say anything. Neither did Tina or Beth. They just sat there, waiting. I guess they thought I was there to talk about funeral arrangements or whatever. I took a deep breath. We need to talk about the house. Sandy frowned, not understanding. What do you mean? We've already talked about this. We're staying here just like James wanted. And there it was, the entitlement I had been expecting. I could feel my anger rising, but I kept my cool. I wasn't going to let them get to me. No, I said, shaking my head. We haven't talked about this. You think you're staying here, but the truth is you're not. This house isn't my dad's. It's mine. I bought it for him after my mom died, and now that he's gone, it goes back to me. The room went dead silent. I could see the shock on Sandy's face, like she had no idea what I was talking about. She blinked a few times before finally saying, "What are you talking about? James never told me that. This is our home." I almost laughed. Yeah, well, he didn't need to tell you. This house was never his to give. I bought it for him to live in after he lost his apartment, but it's been in my name the whole time. And now that he's gone, it's time for you to go too. Tina stood up, looking furious. You can't just kick us out. We've been living here for years. This is our home now. I turned to her, keeping my voice steady. No, it's not your home. You've been living here for free, and I've let it slide because of my dad. But now that he's gone, that stops. You either start paying rent or you leave. You have 3 months to figure it out. They were all stunned. Sandy looked like she was about to cry, but she quickly turned that into anger. You can't do this to us. James wanted us to stay here. I'm sorry, I said, although I didn't really mean it. But that's not how this works. Legally, this is my house, and I'm not going to let you stay here without paying rent. You've been taking advantage of my dad for years, and I'm done letting it happen. Sandy tried to argue, but I wasn't listening anymore. I could feel the tension building in the room, but I wasn't backing down. This was my house, and I had every right to do what I was doing. I've already spoken to my lawyer, I added, pulling out the paperwork to prove it. If you don't believe me, here it is in black and white. I own this house, not you, and not my dad. I've given you 3 months to figure out what you're going to do. After that, if you're not out, I'll have no problem evicting you. Beth was sitting on the couch, staring at the paperwork with her mouth hanging open. This can't be happening, she muttered, looking at Sandy for some kind of reassurance. But Sandy had nothing. She knew it was over. I could see it in her eyes. She had been banking on this house, thinking they could just stay here forever, rent-free. But now, reality was hitting them hard. You've got to be kidding me, Tina said, pacing around the room. After everything we've done for James, you're just throwing us out? I almost laughed again. Everything you've done? You mean disrespecting him, pushing him to get rid of Charlie, and treating him like a guest in his own home? Yeah, real generous of you. They all started talking at once, trying to defend themselves. But I wasn't listening anymore. I'd had enough of their excuses, their entitlement, their complete lack of respect. My dad deserved better, and I wasn't going to let them keep living in this house like they owned it. I've said what I came to say, I told them, turning toward the door. You've got 3 months. After that, We'll see what happens. As I left, I could hear them still arguing behind me, trying to figure out what they were going to do. But that wasn't my problem anymore. They had spent years living off my dad, off of me, and now it was time for them to deal with the consequences. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as I walked out of the house. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I had let them take advantage of the situation for too long, and now it was time to take back what was mine. This house wasn't theirs. It never was. And soon enough, they were going to be out of my life for good. Update 3. So after I told Sandy and her daughters they had to move out or start paying rent, I figured that was the end of it. I mean, what else could they do? I had the law on my side, all the paperwork showing I owned the house, and I gave them more than enough time to figure things out. 3 months was fair, right? Well, apparently Sandy didn't think so. Because, get this, she tried to sue me. Yeah, Sandy actually went to a lawyer and filed a lawsuit, claiming she had a right to stay in the house because she was my dad's wife and had been promised it after he died. When I first heard about it, I almost laughed. I got served the paperwork one afternoon while I was at work, and my first reaction was, "You've got to be kidding me." I mean, what was she thinking? She knew I owned the house. I'd shown her the documents, spoken to her calmly about it, and even gave her more time than most people would to get her life sorted out. But no, apparently that wasn't enough. She decided to take it to court, thinking she'd somehow win. Now, I've never been a fan of going to court. The whole process is just a headache. But at the same time, I wasn't worried. I had my lawyer lined up and ready to go, and I knew we had everything we needed to shut this thing down before it even got off the ground. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. He was calm about it, probably because this kind of thing happens more often than you'd think. He looked over the paperwork Sandy filed and was like, "Yeah, this isn't going to go anywhere. They don't have a leg to stand on." But even knowing that, I was still annoyed that I had to deal with this at all. I mean, come on. They had already been living in my house rent-free for years. What more did they want? Anyway, the whole thing dragged on for a couple of months. Sandy was making all these claims about how she was promised the house by my dad, even though there was zero paperwork or proof to back that up. She tried to play the grieving widow card, acting like I was this evil guy kicking her out of her home. But the reality was, she had no legal claim to the house at all. During the hearings, I had to sit there and listen to her lawyer try to spin this story about how Sandy and my dad had plans to leave the house to her after he passed and how she had put so much into making it a home for them. Yeah, sure. What she left out was how she and her daughters had taken over the place, treated my dad like a guest in his own house, and tried to get rid of Charlie, my dad's dog. But of course, none of that came up. I kept my cool through most of it. I knew the judge wasn't buying it, and my lawyer was doing a great job shutting down every claim Sandy's lawyer made. We had all the documents to prove that the house was mine, title deeds, bank records, everything. So every time they tried to bring up some promise my dad supposedly made, we hit them with cold, hard facts. One of the more ridiculous moments was when Sandy tried to claim she had made improvements to the house and that she deserved some kind of compensation for that. Improvements? The house was in the same condition it had been in when I bought it. If anything, it was in worse shape because they hadn't taken care of it properly. My lawyer pointed that out, and the judge shut that argument down real fast. And, to make it even better, Sandy's daughters, Tina and Beth, had the nerve to show up in court and act like they were victims in all of this. Tina tried to talk about how they had been living there for years and how it was their home, and I just sat there thinking, "You've been living there for free, and now you're trying to act like I owe you something?" I wanted to say something, but my lawyer gave me that look that said, "Let it go," so I stayed quiet. It didn't take long for the judge to make a decision. He basically said what we all knew from the start. Sandy had no claim to the house. There was no will, no written agreement, nothing that showed my dad had ever promised the house to her. And since the house was legally mine, Sandy and her daughters were going to have to move out. I wish I could say I was surprised, but honestly I wasn't. I knew this was how it would end. The whole lawsuit was just a desperate attempt to hold on to something they never had a right to in the first place. The judge gave them a final deadline, 2 weeks to move out, or the eviction process would start. When we walked out of the courtroom, Sandy wouldn't even look at me. She just stormed off with Tina and Beth trailing behind her, all of them acting like I had done something horrible to them. But I didn't feel bad. I'd given them more time and more chances than they deserved, and they still tried to screw me over. In the end, they didn't have much of a choice. After the court ruling, they packed up and left. I didn't hear from them again after that. No more phone calls, no more texts, nothing. It was like they disappeared, and honestly, I was relieved. The whole thing had been a nightmare, but now it was over. The house was finally mine again, and I didn't have to deal with their drama anymore. Sure, it had been a long, exhausting process, but I came out on top. And Sandy? Well, she lost. It didn't matter what promises she thought my dad made. In the end, the law was the law, and she couldn't change that. So yeah, she tried to sue me, and she lost. Now the house is mine, and they're gone for good. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted.